What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Panels on Pages. My name is Dalibor Zujovic, and today I am joined by Rod Hayes, or you may know him as that nerdy Papa Bear on TikTok, also Irrepressible Comics, and creator of Colonel Jefferson. You just started creating, and you're already working on issue 2 and 3. You're beating most of indie comics right now. How are you doing, sir?
I Thanks. Hi, how are you? I had not really picked up a pin to draw before August 1st of last year. That was when
Think
I
about that, folks.
decided.
Think about that.
I
What's
mean, it
hold, what's
shows
holding
though.
you back?
If we're going there, June 23rd. So my kid, I had twin daughters born June 23rd of last year. So they were less than 2 months old when I decided to tackle this as an outlet. I had a 4-year old, he's 5 now. So yeah, you can eke out the time to make something happen if you want it to happen, for sure.
That's you know what? It's funny. People always like I watch a lot of Gary V, and Gary V, there's pluses and minuses to all these like motivational type guys, but he always talks about he's like, what's your 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. look like?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you're gonna have responsibilities. There's lots of stuff that everyone has to do, but I bet there's a little bit of time you could put in towards the thing you're looking for.
Well, and you know, I set out to do this with the mindset of like I'm gonna do it because I want to get this done. But honestly, it has become so relaxing to work on it that it doesn't even feel like a chore on top of all my other responsibilities. This is an outlet. And I held it up once. Like you said, I'm working on issue 2. It's amazing to me in just the amount of time that I've done it, how much different my skill set has become. Like I'm almost embarrassed to show this off, even though I only put it out a few months ago because of how much, it's just you evolve so quickly as an artist, and it's really fun, and there's no excuse, no excuse.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I understand that. Like I have I've always said like I don't have production quality art, but that's a self-imposed. Like I
Yeah,
have a head, like I have an idea of what my books need to look like for me, not
yeah.
to like satisfy any like arbitrary external thing. I just have an idea of what they're supposed to look like, and I can't deliver that. So I'm like, I have to find an artist. That's been my drawback. But it's like it what's funny is looking at you, look what you've done. I'm like, could I come up with something different, something that wouldn't need to look the way I have for this other project
Yeah.
that I could do? Because I do draw, and I'm like, could I come up with something that could be easier for me to do and easier to execute at a good level without needing to look like this specific thing that I have in mind?
That's
So
totally it though. Like this is not my dream project. I mean it's a story I needed to tell. It's local. It's very important to me to tell this story. But I go back to the 5,000 hours thing that like to get good at anything, to get production quality at anything, you gotta put the hours in. And I guess I had the idea that, maybe there's an audience out there that wants to watch those 5,000 hours unfold, if that makes
absolutely,
sense. Like,
absolutely,
like, sure, this won't look as good as I want it to look. Issue 2 is a lot closer. Hopefully, by the end of the story, issue 6, you'll see like the full evolution to someone that can truly take pride in every aspect of their art. Don't get me wrong, there is stuff I am proud of in there, but it's such an evolving process, and I'm sure there's people that have done it. I didn't know anyone else that had truly shown those growing pains. So I have no shame in admitting there are growing pains in my stuff, but I I am proud of those growing pains. And I think everyone should be. I think people are too afraid to make bad art, if you will.
agreed, agreed. Everyone has an arbitrary idea. I mean, like I said, I have this idea of what my book's supposed to look like, but I have thankfully like pulled out of. I used to when I was just getting into the indie space. I was a lot more judgmental. I was like, oh man, like this is like so much worse than X artist at Marvel, X artist at DC. And it's funny because I've like gotten out of that headspace because that's such an arbitrary thing. because
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times, unless the story is just atrocious, I have come to a place where I will forgive even like incomprehensible art. And there is a book that I've read that I genuinely find it hard to understand the panels visually, but the story's engaging. So I still like
Yeah.
the book. So it's like I will, as long as the story is good, it's certainly not one or the other, because it's definitely a visual storytelling medium, but like the story for me is much more important. Like it outweighs the visuals.
Well, and for me, I got my kind of, I don't want to say audience. It's whatever it is. It's like 8,000 people. But I got my core group of people who pay attention to what I have to say through talking about comics from the reviewer perspective. And so I had kind of a trepidation. I always knew, like, I understand the medium in a way that, like, I can write a comic that people would want to read. And I don't mean that with like an ego. I just mean, you absorb enough over 35 years as a comic reader, you're going to know like the pacing, you're going to know how to write a story that fits in that mold. And I set out with the goal of not impacting my family at a stage where I had these young kids. Like, well, if I want to make us go at this comic book thing, but like I can't really justify to the wife going out and hiring like an artist, maybe I could teach myself. And was surprised that I was able to make it, I would say, coherent. Like I think even the early stuff, the pre-issue one stuff, I was staring at it saying like, okay, yeah, there's rough edges, but this is legible. And it became a challenge to myself of, well, how far can I take it? And uh, I was really pleasantly surprised at how quickly. Now, that quickly is definitely relative. You were around for that process. It took me 5 months to get issue one ready. It's now taken me actually 6 months to get issue two ready. I thought I'd be quicker. It's taken me longer, but it did come together relatively quickly. And you throw out a Kickstarter thinking maybe I'll raise enough to actually put it out there. And I was really hoping I'd get one more sale before we recorded this, because yesterday I actually moved my 99th copy between like all um,
Wow.
mediums, between the Kickstarter, TikTok selling locally, and Etsy. And like that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you go out there and you Google, like you see all these motivational things about like 1 in 10 self-published book sells 100 copies. Now that's talking actual like
Sure.
literature, but you figure the comic book numbers are probably close, if not even worse, because it's such a niche compared to uh, traditional publishing or traditional literature. And like it makes me realize that putting the grind in, just making sure you have your face out there and you're telling people like, hey, you should check out my thing, puts you towards the front of the line just for that. Just being passionate about whatever you made, even if it's something different, if it's something niche. Because I guess I didn't even really talk about what Colonel Jefferson is. So this is a political satire about uh, a far alt-right kind of movement taking over just my corner of the state, far northern California, the southern part of Oregon, that has roots going back 150, almost 200 years, that in my world has their version of Captain America, their symbol, Colonel Jefferson, that's all for this really, it's a cult. They are a cult. Uh, and like it's got a very specific sense of humor. There's a scavenger hunt hidden in it. I've got games throughout. It's in no way a serious book. It's in no way like a traditional superhero story. And yet, you find that audience through your passion. It doesn't really matter what you're trying to put out there. If you're excited about it, you're gonna get someone else excited about it. It's my MO now more than ever. I thought that was the case when I started, but now I can confirm all it takes is that ability to love your own stuff will make other people love it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the best con salesmen that I've watched do his thing is Henri Compon. He does just an incredible job. He is in front of his table. He is telling you about this story, the entire universe. You can see the energy he has for it and the passion he has for it. So like I watched this man to complete strangers, people who have never heard of his work, sell them full runs in one conversation because he's so energized for it.
That's the dream. That's the goal. You want to be able to grab any rando off the street and sell them on your whatever you're selling. Right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, you have to have a passion for it. You have to care about the product because I've definitely talked to people who pitch me like the plot and it's this many issues and or whatever. It's very clinical and that may just be their stage presence. They might just need to work on that. But I've definitely had those conversations where I've been like, okay, that's cool. And like, I don't really, I don't care. If you don't seem to care, I don't see, I'm not going to
Right.
care. So like, all right, cool. Well, good luck. And, keep going. Cause if you're not there excited to tell me about this thing, why am I going to get excited?
Yeah.
Cause
And
you got to move money.
it's funny you use the term clinical, and I do think there's an extent to which you're not selling a plot. Like you do, like that is part of your pitch, but really you're selling the package, and that's where showing that it's you on the page comes in. And like I said, like I'm not I don't go too deep into the story. Like I make it clear it's got some political leanings just so that people don't buy it and then get really upset that it's the opposite of the original perspective or whatever. But I harp on the tone and the sense of humor. I make sure they understand how personal it is, and I feel like those are the pitches that let someone know how important a story is to the creator, way more than a plot synopsis. And you're talking 24 pages. If you give a full plot synopsis, they don't have a reason to read it. If you give them the beat by beat,
Right.
even if you only give them the first half, if you tell them half the story, then there's you're cutting off the entire purpose of sitting down and reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I I do think I learned that the hard way, because when I first started talking about it heading into my Kickstarter, I really thought I had to over explain what the state of Jefferson was, what like the reason why this group is so dangerous, and like why they made sense to put into a comic book. And it took me longer than it probably should have to kind of move away from that and realize like the book will explain all of that. The story here explains that. I need to give them the quick why, what, like the five W's. That's what they need.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that was the hardest thing I had to come to terms with because every time I talk about my project, I always wanted to be like, it's this whole thing, and boom, boom, boom. They already given them the whole big scope, and it's like that's too much. That's you're putting you're putting the entire dinner. You got to give them the appetizer.
well, but the eventual thing I want to build to is a sci-fi epic, and that's gonna probably still be a few years out, whether that's once I can afford to collaborate or I can get my art to where I'm actually like feel comfortable doing that. And there is no way I can, at the point where I'm at in my pitch ability, pitch it without going into way too much detail about like these finite little details. And that's another thing I know I need to tackle before I tackle that project is how do I mold that pitch into something more palatable. And I think that's actually a really understated part of the indie side of comics that you don't have to deal with when you're working for the big two. Like, they've got entire massive marketing teams that handle that for you. Your
Yeah,
pitch goes into the closed room where that is what you're presenting is those hard details. And the pitch you give to a boardroom or a writer's room is so different than the pitch you give a guy on the street.
of course, yeah, because you don't have to pitch the core elements of X-Men when you pitch an X-Men story.
Yeah.
But like when someone doesn't know what you're talking about, I need to know the basic premise right off the bat. Like that's why a lot of people resort to, well, it's like this, it's like that. I actually try to goad someone into like giving me more, like just give me something about the story because all they posted on it was a Facebook post and they were like, oh, we got this book coming out. If you like X-Men and Fantastic Four and all like they listed all this other stuff that like if you like that, you'll like this book. And I'm like, okay, but why? What's the book about? Like you've told me
Well,
nothing.
or like in the 60-year span of the Fantastic Four, which iteration,
Yeah,
what tone? Like that book has had such a
which era?
range.
Which like
That's really
you gotta
funny.
give me something more. I need to know a little bit more. Because it's like, oh, like if you like Power Rangers, I'm like, right, but there's 20 seasons. Which ones? So I wanted to, well, first of all, I wanted to recommend, and I'm sure you've thought about this, but I'm a fan of process. So like going from issue one to issue six, like the process of you getting to where you want to be. Uh, I would love to see a like collected edition, ideally hardcover. That's just because I like
Yeah.
hardcovers, with like a section in the back that's like issue one or pre-issue one first drawing of Captain Jefferson and like issue six cover, peak art. I'd love
Yeah,
to see that kind of thing and see like your story throughout.
I've definitely got a flash drive of like in process stuff from all those early sketches. I've actually the premise of the character goes back probably 10 years. So I
Oh
have
wow.
even on paper some like uh character sketches that are so rudimentary but have all the design elements. Like I knew what his mask was gonna be. Yeah, probably 2016-ish. So I guess not 10
Oh
years, but
wow.
close to it. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. See, that's the kind of thing I love. I love seeing that kind of thing. Like one of my favorite bits, even when I was younger, to see was like the original drawing of Spartan that Jim Lee had from seventh grade. I
Yeah.
thought that was the funniest shit ever. And like finding out that the reason that Maul has horns on his back is just because seventh grade Jim Lee thought that was cool. Like that's
Yeah.
my favorite shit. Like I love that's I have a whole I'm actually packing stuff up. You see the boxes behind me. I'm packing. We're planning on moving soon. And I've got like art books right here. And it's just all I love process. Absolutely love process. Like
Well,
seeing
I love
how things come together.
I think all of those early image guys all had some version of that story where they were all designing these characters in sixth, seventh, fifth grade, and that is so epic to see. Because I've got somewhere behind me, you can see. You don't have to worry about the hardcover. That is definitely a goal of mine eventually. That's my preferred format too. Uh, but I got Savage Dragon, the Ultimate Collections here somewhere, and I love seeing Eric Larson's like super early sketches of the dragon. Same thing. He was like created this character before puberty, and you just like the evolution to the point of where he actually got to put them on paper, and
And
now
no
has been
context
writing
of
them for
who he
30
was.
years. Yeah.
No context of who he was. No actual origin story till they literally like beat one out of him. Basically, they were like, "Hey,
Yep.
we need an origin," and he just put like it was like a one-off issue zero, and it turns out he's an alien. And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I guess spoiler alert if you're not a Savage Dragon reader for 40 years.
If you're gonna come binge it now.
Yeah, it's funny. Are you still reading like current Savage Dragon?
I'm probably at this point 2 years behind, which is probably only 4 or 5 issues because it's gotten so sporadic. But
It
I
really
was
has.
keep
It really has. He was going pretty hard. I took a peek at some of the recent issues in the last couple of years, and I was just like, oh, oh, this is like turned into like a pervy old man writes this. Like
is it that
it's
bad? Yeah,
it's
I'm not got to
so
that
like
point.
I was just like, why there's so much sex? Like it's just a lot of sex in this book. I was like, geez.
Well, and that's weird because my thought when I see the covers lately are always like, oh, it's like a family sitcom now because it's always just like him
Right.
posing on the
They
cover
got
with the
so
kids.
many kids, but they have sex so often. And I was like, oh my. Like
Hey, you know what? When we're in our early 70s and still creating funny books, we'll probably miss those days too and want
right, right. There's that for sure, for sure. But no,
to.
that's it's to have a book that's been running that long. It's fascinating to me. I really so I just like a kind of a side note analysis. I I actually had an appeal for the book Ant. It
Mhm.
came out like early 2000s and it was kind of dropped a few times. Like the last 2 3 years, Larson bought the rights from the guy. So he outright bought the character
Okay.
and finally put out like the last issue of the original run. And I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, this is terrible. And I'm like, this dude did this. He either did this in like an afternoon, like it just it was I'd never seen a lazier piece of art from Eric Larson in my life, and I was just like, what the fuck is happening? And then right after that came out, I saw that the Dragon book started becoming more spaced out, and I was like, oh shit! I'm like, he's old. Like the dude's aged. Maybe
Yeah,
it just takes him longer to produce the same quality of stuff that he had been, so he can't do monthly anymore. Which
I can
is,
see
I
that.
get it. And that's why that's to kind of, we've talked about this on TikTok before, but like AI, that's why I've talked about this before. I think AI could be used for somebody like that. Like if he could train his own thing, he could use his own art to continue
Okay,
making his own book.
this is definitely like a rough week for me to chat too hard about AI because I'm very angry about some other AI stuff that's been going on. But I think the thing that the AI conversation needs to be framed as is like machine learning tools. Yeah, that's a great example. Like someone that's able to capture their own, or even there's some really cool stuff out there right now where like tremor control stuff where like
Mm,
folks that can't actually hold the pencil anymore or the pen, the stylus, and through machine learning, because like Clip Studio does have like stabilization where it'll just stabilize your lines,
right.
but this is taking it a step further where they're going in with machine learning and they're basically uh fixing your lines after the fact if it's like a person that has, and I don't know all the details because I just was reading an article about it the other day, but it sounds like it's got really, really huge potential for like disabled folks and those kind of purposes of giving people access to tools to do things that either they used to do or they've always wanted to do. And that I love. The problem is what we have so far in the vast majority of AI art is generative AI that is literally just scraping and stealing art that already exists,
Right.
and it steals twice essentially because you've got the homeboy who doesn't want to pay an artist, so they're stealing from the artist they would be paying by using the AI at all, and then the data sets it's pulling from are stolen from people's skill sets. So it's one of the rare times that you can commit two crimes at once, essentially, and it's all currently legal. Like that's the part that's completely insane, is they
It
refuse.
it's an incredibly frustrating space because it's funny. Well, my initial response when I first heard about it, like when I was first seeing it, and I was like, I tried like Dolly or whatever just to see like what it could create, because I was like, here is what I would tell an artist
Yeah.
expecting what I'm asking for, and I would just put like Superman fighting Batman. That's all I put, and it would just come out with these like nonsensical things, and I was just like, yeah, if I have to spend an hour like carefully fidgeting the words so that it gives me what I want, that's not the point of me getting someone else to do the art.
Right.
Like, I want to be able to go up to an artist and say, hey, I'd like a piece of Cable and Deadpool, and I'm going to walk away and I'm going to come back whenever you tell me to come back. And I'm going to expect to see a piece of Cable and Deadpool on
Yeah.
this piece of paper. That's it. Like, I can't do that with AI. And maybe one day you will, and maybe it'll get so good or whatever. But I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have patience for that. Right now, it all looks so fucking cookie cutter. It all looks so generic that ugh, it's disgusting, honestly.
What does scare me is I too played with it. I want to say it was still just Dolly. It wasn't even Dolly 2. And exactly, you got like these almost surreal like attempts that you could tell conceptually like, oh yeah, that is the thing I described, but
Right.
it was not the equivalent of human art. And now it's gotten so much closer in just a few years where what it
Oh
pops
yeah.
out, it's lifeless. It always gets the weird, like you'll see random extra fingers thrown in, or the eyes are totally dead eyes. Like there are certain giveaways that something's AI art, but if we've gotten there that quickly, then eventually it's going to be lifeless art that at least passes. And
Right.
probably within a year or two, we're going to have that where the average Joe won't be able to tell just by looking at it. And if we don't put in some protections for real artists, I don't think it's ever going to match human creativity. Like that's just the honest truth. But
No, no.
I do think the average person, especially before they purchase it, especially in the comic book space, when you just flip through a book and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's worth grabbing," that it'll be good enough for that. Like it'll be good enough to trick people at least.
Yeah,
It might not ever hold up to scrutiny once you're at home and you're really pouring over it. But and again, I'll throw out there, it just dawned on me that's stealing a third time essentially because you're tricking your audience. But
yeah,
that's my biggest fear with it is that it'll be kind of like Walmart where it'll when it first hits that threshold it will kill the market for traditional artists because people are already starving. When you talk about AI, there was that era where we were told like, oh, machine learning is going to make it so all the mundane jobs, all the boring jobs are going to become obsolete and you're going to have
right.
time to pursue all of your creative passions. Like that's the goal of AI. And in just a few years, we've decided now the first jobs it's going to steal are the people who are currently doing the creative shit, the people who are following their creative dreams, and they're going to be forced to go get a mundane job while AI does all the fun stuff. And that's the part that truly terrifies me because once it kills the creative market, it doesn't matter how samey it all is. It doesn't matter
Right.
that all of those data sets it has scraped will eventually no longer be interesting because that's all the art we're getting. And there won't be any new artists to rob because artists aren't making any money anymore. And for the rest of our existence, that will be what art sells. Will just be this AI mishmash and maybe there'll be a resurgence. Like it's you never think like, oh, people will just stop drawing, but once you don't have an ability to do it for a living, you'll lose that institutional knowledge. Because that's the other thing. I wouldn't have been able to publish this if I didn't have a whole bunch of people who did it before me who were giving me tips along the way.
Right.
If we lose that, if there's for even just a few years as the AI bullshit works out, a zero market for comic book creation to be done by hand, which is it's an end game thing. Like that's not going to happen tomorrow, and that probably is not really like that's an exaggeration, but that's the fear to me is that we will lose the ability to have anyone doing this for and I don't want to say living because again, AI was supposed to make it so we didn't have to like fight and scrape for a living, and that's why we were all going to get it preserved. But for their fulfillment, like that shouldn't be like someone's life work should not be erased by an AI uh, stealing the art that is theirs. There was when the whole drama you alluded to unfolded. I had multiple people who had their art was part of those stolen data sets. When that
Oh wow.
there was that case go I think 6 months ago where in Discovery one of the AI companies had to release that spreadsheet of names of every artist that was in their thing. And they're like, yeah, I was on that, and you know what? I have had less work lately, and it just it's such dystopian shit. And like AI is this turning point where we can either walk it towards a utopia or a dystopia. Like, do we want it to take over the jobs no one wants to do, or the jobs that give people's lives meaning? And I don't know.
The thing
So
I try like so I tried with that dude. Like I try to keep an open mind with shit, and the fact that and what we're talking about, I'm not afraid of saying it. Like he has avoided every attempt of me to have him on to discuss this with him directly and to have him explain
yeah.
his himself. So I'm okay with just being like, so I don't even know dude's name. I forget it. It's I whatever.
I don't
The
want to get personal just because he and I actually used to be on a podcast network together. Like that's how close we used to be.
Oh
We
wow,
didn't host the same show, but like we shared tips and like we
interesting.
were pretty close. So that's the other reason it got really personal for me. Like some of his
Sure,
rebuttals, like he posted an apology and followed that apology up with basically a 3 minute rant against me for suggesting, hey, don't spread a like don't promote AI art. I thought I was throwing him a lifeline of like, dude, you want to make a career in comics? spreading information about AI is probably going to hurt your chances of getting people on your like show you're starting and all this stuff. And I didn't phrase it all of that. I probably was a little snarky in how I said it, but that was my thought process was like,
Right.
dude, you probably like don't want to be dipping your toes into the biggest controversy so flippantly. And
Yeah.
it is what it is. But I think you could have a really good conversation. I cut ties, but
I
I think if
tried,
you were
man. Like
able
I
to get
said,
him on,
I tried real hard, and every time I see the book, I'm like, hey, I bought the book. I didn't realize, like, I didn't, I liked the pitch, the story idea, and I was like, the cover looks cool. I'm gonna buy it. And then as I like, it was like it's in your, it's gonna ship or whatever. I like read the description like after the fact. It was very much an impulse buy, and I read the description, and it was like, however, artificially generated. I was like, wait, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, right? And when it finally came in, the dice hit it, and I was like, first of all, how often do the dice hit? Because I don't know if I'm sure you know, I
yeah, you're
roll dice to read
rolling.
books, and the dice rarely hit the fucking book that I just put on the shelf. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? Fine. And I open it and the first page is like this explanation of like I use this plus like working in Photoshop to like make sure there's consistency, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, like that helped, but I'm not on board with the art. But I'm like, I'm gonna give the story a chance. And I like the story. So I was like, well shit, all right, let me get this dude on. I want to talk to him,
Yeah.
and then we can discuss the art. Because like I still, I was like, I don't know how I feel about the art. Every single time, the first time I said it, he was like, "Oh, I'll let me check it out, and we'll talk." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then I would like hit him up again after a few weeks or whatever. And a couple months later, I'll be like, "Hey, let's get on the show, and you could talk about the book." And then nothing and nothing, just avoiding all. And I was like, "All right, well, fuck this dude." Like,
So
and
I thought you were talking about the person who recently promoted him. I didn't realize you were talking about the actual author of the book. So that
oh,
dude,
oh, okay.
that dude, we can fucking call him out all day because he is a SAG-AFTRA actor.
Bro,
He
that's the
was
thing that I didn't know that. When
yeah,
I bought it and shit, I was like, I get it. Like if this, because he's taking his videos in like a corner with a white background, and I was like, this
yep.
dude has nothing. Like this dude's just trying to get his shit out. That was my thought. And then you were like, he was on Dexter, and I was like, fuck this dude.
So he put that out while his union was in negotiations on strike
That's
against
right.
AI coming on in their industry, and he had no
Hmm.
problem like crossing the picket line. Well, I guess it's technically not scabbing because it's in a different industry, but essentially going and doing the exact thing they were picketing in another industry. He does not
Wow.
mention in any of the videos that it's AI. He puts a disclaimer in on the TikTok shop like page way down, like it mentions it's AI, but it does not mention he doesn't mention it on screen ever when he talks about it. Uh, I have looked through the book only because I got into kind of a tiff with him like 6 months or so ago, and so someone tagged me in a review in it because they had bought it not knowing, and I don't buy for a second he manually adjusted the art for more than a few seconds because like the monsters or the characters will completely change between pages, which is a sign of AI that like
Yeah, yeah,
you don't suddenly go from gaunt to tall, and like all of those changes are
yeah.
because it's the AI popping out the prompt slightly different each time. uh he has sold so many copies, and even if he hadn't his Dexter money, he could have afforded an artist, because that's one of the core like arguments you hear is like, well, what if someone can't afford an artist? And I feel like I'm kind of an example of what you fucking do. You fucking learn to draw, or you raise some money, you do a Kickstarter, and you hire an artist. Like, you don't get a shortcut in life because you can't afford it. But this guy doesn't even have that excuse. He clearly could afford it. He's working on volume two, or maybe he's put it out. I don't know. I have been blocked by him for a while because of our tiff. But he's not planning on hiring an artist for the future volume, even though he's sold whatever it is, 985 copies or whatever absurd
I
number it
did the
is.
math. According to the number he said over 2,000 copies. I
Okay.
did the math on that, and that's a lot of money.
Yep.
That's a lot because they're like what, 15, $17 a piece.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of money. And like
Definitely
you're
enough to
gonna,
hire definitely enough to hire an artist.
especially for the limited quantity, those are panels. Like those are just panels. Those aren't even full pages. Like only like 3 or 4 pages had more than one panel on them.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're talking panel count. We're not even talking page count. Like this is like a web comic, and if you just took
Well,
one panel and made it a one page.
and it's got to be like the Amazon KDP printing or something because it's got giant black boxes around every like it's weird formatting where there's so much wasted
I
space on the
think he,
page.
yeah, I think he did that because he doesn't have understand, like you said, he doesn't have that
Right.
industry knowledge of like how to fucking put a page together for a comic book. Like he tried to make it this individual thing, but like some pages it's just like one bar of visuals. I don't know, I hesitate to call art. It's one bar of visuals and then just like one dialogue box, and I'm like, I mean, this feels like a wasted page, but okay.
That was the other thing when I was going back and forth with him is his defense was that he was like, and I'm creating jobs because he pays someone to do all the shipping for them. That he's got like an assistant that does the packaging and the shipping and like so he's selling enough copies that he needs someone to run that process for him. But then you have to wonder like, well, so what part of this are you doing? Maybe who knows if ChatGPT fucking wrote the thing? We don't
I
have any way
literally
of knowing.
I had that exact thought the other day. I was like, you know what? I'm like, this is dude, I was telling the same story to someone, and I was like, and who knows? Like now that I think about it, like who knows if he fucking wrote the goddamn thing?
Yep. And I don't know if it's still the first thing, but when I had my feud with him back, and it was when my Kickstarter was running because that's when I first got like really incensed about AI because I was like, you know what, this was a lot of work, and like people are shortcutting around this work, and the first thing that came up when you Googled him was him on a business podcast bragging about what a great business model it was that he was able to produce it in a weekend and it took so little work. It's all he had to do was modify it and like how everyone should do it and how much money he was making off it. It was literally him just sitting there bragging about all of the aspects that make it so vile, but from a like, man, I am a genius businessman perspective. And so I think that was kind of the final straw for me was seeing that he was self-aware about it, but self-aware
It's
in the exact wrong way.
yeah, it's definitely the same vibe as a lot of finance bros, a lot of
Yep.
the like quick money, like hustle bros. Like this is the the these he is of the same group of people that for a long time were drop shipping AliExpress shit for
Yep.
twice the fucking money, doing
Yep.
none of the actual work but raking in the profits. He's that
Ex
group of people.
Except he is like a C tier celebrity, so he doesn't even need to do that bullshit.
Right, right. He's not some fucking rando that just like, oh, you know what? I'll drop ship and make some money and then sell courses about how to drop ship. No, he's a dude who had access. Like in reality, like how hard would it have, like unless he's just like a really shitty personality and like just people don't like him, which I can understand. But like if he has any kind of decent personality, I guarantee you, within 1 or 2 people, he knows an artist.
Yeah.
How hard is that pitch? Hey, I've got this idea. I think it'll be really good. I think it'll sell. While this strike is happening, let's put this together.
Which there was a really cool anthology about Cal Exit that was all like people involved with the strike raising money for other people in SAG-AFTRA, like their whatever the community fund or whatever it was that was paying for the like low level actors who literally couldn't feed their families. And that was a really good book. I wish I could think of the full name of it, but that was crowdfunded about late last summer. I only know because it had like a reference to like general striking and used the same font I was going to use for the Colonel Jefferson logo. And at the time, the character was General Jefferson, and I was like, "Oh shit, I gotta slightly change the name so it doesn't look like I'm ripping these guys off." But really, really great anthology. But even if he didn't know someone who knew someone, when you go on internet circles and talk about like look, hey, let's collab, let's do this. Like the number one thing you can't get away with is, yo, I have this great idea. Anyone want to work for exposure? Like, I'm looking for an artist. I can't pay you, but maybe if it sells well, then I could pay you. Number one thing you can't do, unless you're a fucking Hollywood actor with the clout to be like, hey, I'm looking for somebody to join my project. I guarantee you he could have found someone. And I'm not condoning that would have been the right move, but that would have
Right,
been better than using an AI. Like he
right.
definitely could have found a clout chaser that was willing to draw it for him. 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anybody in Comicsgate would have done it.
Yeah, that's that's true.
Anybody, any one of them, any one of them, dude. That's a whole nother cesspool. There's a lot of cesspools in the
Yeah.
indie creative space. There's a lot of pockets of people that are just the worst.
Every industry has it. I feel like indie comics and podcasting for some reason have had the most buy-in in their cesspools to the point where like they're gurgling more than anywhere else. Like I see the dudes on Patreon that literally just go on and talk about like that video game is too woke and they're somehow making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And it's not people that actually listen to the show. It's just literally screwing them libs by
Yeah, it's that's the
paying
thing is
money.
the name that keeps getting brought up in various conversations is Eric July, and
Yeah.
my universal response is Eric July is a fucking clown because he is. Because I remember I used to subscribe to his YouTube channel because I watched a video, I mean, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, okay, like he's a little aggressive, but I see what he's saying. Okay, I understand where he's coming from. And then the next video I watched of his, which was like months later because I just wasn't following like all like most people on my like comic book channels. Uh he was like he pulled out the like first the new number one issue of Captain Marvel and was just like, look at this fucking feminist bullshit, and he threw it off the camera, and I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, why did you just throw that comic? What's wrong with you? And then I saw like the next one, and it was another fucking some wokeness bullshit. And I was like, oh, this guy is just a fucking angry, like this dude's just mad. So I put it away. I didn't even know the dude's name. I just knew him as the young
Right.
Rippa or whatever the fuck. And then I saw someone post Rippaverse, and I thought it was a joke. I was like, oh yeah, wouldn't that be funny if that nut job was making a comic book? And then I saw the fucking intro video, and I was like, oh my god, he is. This is terrifying. But and it's
Yeah.
funny to me because his whole thing is like, oh, we don't care about your identity politics. I'm like, right, but in saying that, you are presenting an identity like you're participating in the thing. Like it's
Everything they do is pure projection. It's the like they're the most involved with identity politics. The whole fuck your feelings, like facts over feelings, but they are the like it's like somehow they never learned that anger is a feeling.
yeah,
You are the most emotional group I've ever seen with how mad you get at like other people living their lives, and you're
yep.
just so outraged by it. But you want to tell me you're the ones that are just leaving feelings at the door? Really?
And it's
It's just
fucking and the fucking and here the whole like, oh, you made like $1 million or whatever. I was like, okay, I mean, but he didn't sell comic books. He sold an identity.
yeah,
We're not them. If you're with us, you're like, if you're not with them, then you're with us. That's an identity. You're not selling comic books because no one knew what the fuck ISOM was about. Because I watched the intro and I was like, what the fuck is he talking about?
yeah.
And it was like, because of a certain event. We're not in your writing room. What the fuck certain event are you talking about? It's like you're winking at us for a new project. We're supposed to have a backstory to this. It's like you can wink at me talking about Inferno, you
Yeah.
know? Like, you can't do that with a new book that no one's ever fucking heard of. And it's like I bootlegged it and I read it, and I was like, literally every page, I was just like, this is fucking terrible. Just absolute garbage. And I was like, I would have been so fucking pissed if I had paid for this. I
Well,
would have
that's
been
that's the
so pissed.
that's the thing, right? They talk about owning the libs and like, oh, the only people owned are the people you tricked into like money laundering for you, essentially. Like,
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
I'm not I'm not owned because you put out some bullshit. Like that doesn't affect me because I have given you no money. I have
Yep.
zero interest in it. You can put out whatever bullshit you want. It doesn't
Hmm.
affect me. I'm over here.
Yep. Yeah. If you guys want to keep circle jerking with the same $1 million, going between you and fucking what's his fucking name? Ethan Van Sciver, like, go for it. I don't fucking care. Like,
Can we talk about how fun it would be to be a fly on the wall at the Van Sciver like Thanksgiving dinner though? Because his brother puts out such thoughtful shit, and then he's over here being
really?
full comic skate. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Because
awesome.
I can't think of the brother's first name now, and I feel really stupid for it because they're all really good. But uh, they were this Mormon family, and like Ethan grew up and went full comic skate, while his brother puts out these like really thoughtful like commentaries on growing up Mormon and like things like that, and they're really well done. His
Wow.
they clearly have polar opposite politics, and but you read interviews and apparently they are still like normal like family like gatherings and like they in communication, and I just like man, I'd love to get fly on the wall just to like see what those conversations are like because they're just so opposite. But
Dude, it was so funny because like I didn't even know what the fuck Comicsgate was. It came across my radar when I was in a Facebook group and they were talking about somebody had gotten kicked out of uh um Grand Rapids Comic Con, and I had gone there, so like I knew what Grand Rapids Comic Con was. They're like, "Oh yeah, this dude Mike S Miller. He's like Mike S Miller. He got kicked out of Grand Rapids Comic Con." I was like, "Oh, like why would someone get kicked out? Like I like didn't even know that was a thing. Like why would
yeah,
someone
like
get
how
kicked
do you
out of a
how do you
Comic
get
Con?"
kicked out?
Yeah,
Sure.
I was like, "How was an artist get kicked out of a Comic Con?" And then I looked it up. I was like, "Oh, this dude like drew Marvel and shit. Like why? Why is he kicked out?" And then I like did a little research and it turned out like fucking Mark Wade called him an animal, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, so I like look into this dude and I caught like a live. They were doing lives, him and a bunch of dudes, and he that's what it was. It turned out that he had some dude on, and the guy started talking, and they cut him off, and they just ejected him out of the call,
Oh.
and they like were making fun of him or whatever. And I was just like, I mean, the dude was kind of going on Knox. Like I watched the clip, and I was like, I mean, the dude was kind of going non sequitur, like he wasn't really talking about the thing. So I'm like, it's his show. Like I kind of get why he did it.
Yeah.
But then I watched the thing and they were like talking shit about like because this is a black guy and there was something about like their commentary was I bet his dad wasn't around to teach him manners or some shit. I was like, what the
Jesus
fuck, dude?
Christ.
Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, that was not necessary. And then so I was like, let me watch one of these lives and see like what the fuck's going on. And I started asking questions, and I'm like, what is Comicsgate? Because they started talking about it, and I was like, what is this Comicsgate thing? Like, what are you guys talking about? They're like, well, we don't like how they're treating our characters, blah blah blah. And so like we're doing our own thing. I was like, cool, yeah, it's indie comics. Welcome. I was like, this has been going
We've
on.
been here for years.
And I was just like, what, like, why did you have to do all this instead of just like going out and publishing your own books? And they're like, well, where were you a year ago? And it was just like, indie comics are fucking new. I didn't invent them a year ago. What are you talking about? I didn't just come up with this shit. I was
Well,
just so confused.
the problem is most indie comic creators who aren't involved in Comicsgate are probably more open-minded than the mainstream shit. So like usually they're gonna hit a bigger brick wall when they try to enter the indie
Yeah,
space.
you're
Just
right there. You're right there. You're right there for sure. For sure. It's the stuff that I see coming out occasionally because I was following a few people I've blocked since because I was like I can't stand your fucking both sidesisms. It's like, well, I don't mind. And there's one fucking kid. He's been on the show before. And I tried to give him an opportunity on this show. I tried to give him an opportunity
yeah.
on the show to walk back his ridiculous statement. And he still wouldn't. He wouldn't fucking say it. And he flat out commented on a conversation on Facebook that he didn't care if Nazis bought his comic. And I was like, right, but like, and it's like no one mentioned Nazis. No one had
Right.
mentioned Nazi. He brought Nazis into the conversation, and I was just like, right, but like, why Nazis? And he's like, well, I can't vet everyone. Right, right. No, I understand the point you're making, but you specifically brought
Yeah.
Nazis into the conversation. So
You
like,
didn't say I don't care if anyone buys my book. You didn't say all perspectives welcome. You specified like the worst of the worst, and
and it's like, and I like several times, and even the last time where he like conceded, his concession was Nazis are bad. Fine, are you happy? I'm like, but that's not even what I was trying to get you to do. Like,
right.
I was just like, dude, I can't do this anymore. And it was just like, there's certain people that try to play both sides. Like, well, I've got, and he like tries to play the victim card a lot. He's like, Ethan Van Sciver hates me. I'm not Comicsgate. I'm like, right, but you're not against Comicsgate, and that's too close.
Right.
Like, I'm debating wearing a fuck Comicsgate shirt to C2E2.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where I'm sitting. And it's like the only reason I'm debating is because I just bought some X-Men shirts. Then I don't usually get to wear X-Men shirts to comics stuff, and X-Men is my favorite shit. It's the only reason I'm debating.
So if there's two sides, one side saying these guys shouldn't be allowed to exist, and the other side saying like we think everyone should be allowed to exist, and you're like, I think I'm right in between those two. I think they both have equal viewpoints. You're siding with the bullshit. Like you're siding with the bad guy. Like that's
Yeah,
just the way life is.
yeah,
You're either
yeah,
for or against Comicsgate. There's
yeah,
no, I'm completely indifferent to them. Well, then you're fucking blind. Like,
yeah. The indie comic space it's been very educational, man. It's been very, very educational. I've like learned shit about people after I've bought stuff, and now it's like I'm
yeah,
staring at shit on my shelf, and I'm like, like I already spent the money. I can't unspend this money.
yeah,
And then it's like, well, if I, when the dice hit it, I'm just not going to talk about it. I'm going to read it, keep my shit to myself. I'm not going to promote the work because I'm like, that's the only thing I can do. You know, the money's spent. I eliminated that person from my feeds. I'm like, because I was like, oh, what's this motherfucker about? Like, let me just make sure I'm following him because I was organizing my shelf and I'm putting stuff up and I'm like, let me make sure I'm following people. And I pull up his Facebook and it's just like, trans hate, trans hate, trans hate. I was like, whoa, who the fuck is this dude? I was like, absolutely not. No.
well, and that's the thing, right? Because pre the internet, you probably could realistically buy into separating the art and the artist. Like
Yeah,
that was
before you
possible
knew.
because you could be ignorant and it wasn't just out of laziness or out of like willful ignorance. You could just not know because that shit wasn't publicized.
Yep.
These days, I really struggle to buy, enjoy, absorb a story when I know, oh no, the person who made that is a total piece of shit. Well, then I'm not going to be able to separate that, and I don't think it's healthy to be able to separate that. Like, I think it's now a flaw to be able to separate the art from the artist if they're out there doing shit. Like
Yeah.
I get there is probably still people that manage to put stuff out and get people to read it and don't put themselves out there. I think that's a very slim group of people that have that privilege. I think the only way
Yeah.
to get people to read your stuff is to put it out there. You're selling yourself just as much as you're selling your creation. And that's
Yeah.
what makes like them now so intrinsically linked. There is no separating them anymore because they are one and the same, just a fact of life. Like
Yeah.
I
Outside
I
outside of a couple like all-time like major artists, major writers, very few people don't get to be on social anymore.
yep.
I mean, like I have seen Jeff Johns. And like to give context to anyone who doesn't know, Jeff Johns was leading DC, the entire comic book division for a while, the entire entertainment division for a while. He was in charge of the Green Lantern movie in 2011. He was in charge of much of the DCEU before his falling out. He's been on the small, like weirdly smallest podcasts I've seen, and I'm just like, why is he slumming? Well, that's because he's not a name at DC anymore. He's an indie creator now. He has to be
Yeah.
online but he wasn't before. He was almost unavailable. Like you couldn't get to Jeff Johns before Ghost Machine.
Yep.
Now it's Ghost
Which
Machine everything. Now it's that's all he talks about is Ghost Machine.
I don't know how much you talk about Like I know their kind of image. They're a bigger book. Uh, I quite enjoyed the first. What was the Redcoats? Redcoats first issue. That was pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
Worth a read. Yeah.
I haven't touched any of them yet. I've before because Geiger was already coming out before, which was their
Yeah.
kind of like beta book, I guess. Uh, I've glanced through that before, but I'm a collection guy. I'm a trade guy, so like very few books do I read monthly besides like X-Men. And then I wasn't gonna read Outsiders until I saw the last page of issue one, and I saw what like I was like flipping through it, and I was like, oh, is that the carrier? Because I fucking love the Authority.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fucking carrier? Yes. Whatever happens, I'm reading this fucking book. Like they've got I literally, let me show you. I still haven't put it away because it's so fucking massive. I finally went and bought this thing, the Planetary Holy Shit Edition.
Yeah.
Like I love it. It's got like ingrained, but this is the book on the last page of the first issue of the New Outsiders. Like this is the book, the Planetary Guide. I saw
Yeah.
that and I was just like, fuck, I gotta read that now.
Man, that is a big ass book, dude.
It's fucking massive. It's so heavy. I have like 30 boxes like boxed up, and it's you can see I'm a fraction of the way there. I'm not even
Yeah. How,
close.
how soon are you moving?
I mean, probably in the next 3 to 6 months. I'm really trying to like be ahead of the game. I don't want
Proactive.
to have to move in 6 weeks. I don't. I've done it
Yeah.
before. It's been like, well, we like have a place like we're starting the process, and it's just like wrap shit up now. And that's why literally my garage is full of stuff still.
Moving far or just new place in the same
just
town?
just a new place. We got some. My mother-in-law moved in with us, so we got some new needs as far as like layout and things like that. So we're just trying to find something that's going to
Nice.
better suit us all. Yeah, it's very frustrating because it's like the market kind of sucks ass right now, but
Oh, totally.
we gotta play the hand we're dealt, you know?
That's we got this place in 2020 with a like okay that'll as the family grows we'll move a little bit like this gets us established in the town and like it has so quickly become our okay we're here for life like we're not touching the
Yeah,
markets until major changes happen. I guess we'll upgrade as we go. We won't
yeah.
change locations because it's scary. So
It's fucking terrifying out there. You know,
congrats, but also good luck.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, it's been wild. It's been wild. Speaking, I've got it right here. I've got the X-Men. I'm mad like a mad rush at a convention right lately, recently, and picked up a bunch of
Ooh,
old school
ooh,
magazines, and they were all. It was like, I mean, for $2, for $3,
yeah,
it's like a crime if I leave it here.
absolutely.
So I wanted to ask your thoughts on the fall of X up to current. I am current on everything except Unlimited.
I don't know if you've caught on we dropped doing our X-Men podcast because of how just over uh Fall of X we were. And like I'm still reading Rise and Fall of was it Rise of whatever the two current
Fall of the House of X and Rise of the
Fall of
Powers.
House and Rise of Powers. Yeah. I'm reading both of them. I'm reading Resurrection of Magneto. I have dropped pretty much all the side books just because I am so. I knew Krakoa had to end eventually, but it just feels like such fervent ground. And like even the reboot coming, I'm excited for Gale to take over a book. But I'm just at this point where there was something so awesome about how different the premise of the Krakoan era was. That Hickman came in and was like, we're going to redefine what it means to be a mutant, what it means to die, what it means. Like, it was just like existential, complete reimagining of the way the entire Marvel Universe worked, but specifically through the mutants. They were ostracized in a completely different way. And I feel like one fall was so disrespectful, and then to just roll into a second fall, it's like, well, now we're gonna fall even further. But then the pitch for the new one is basically the polar opposite of the pitch of Grove. It's like, well, what if there was three teams and they lived in different places? And it just feels so lazy by comparison. That said, the creative teams, at least, I mean, I'm excited for Gale. Gale coming back is just awesome. Period. But I'm not. I don't know. I like what Al Ewing is doing in the Resurrection. Like it's a good read at least. It seems like maybe there'll be some remnants of Morocco that'll still have the vibes that like I loved about Krakoa. Like at least we'll have a small piece of what I've enjoyed. You know, it hasn't even been that long because I think you followed as I was trying to binge read just pre-Axe. Like I came back into X-Men really late because I had just lapsed right around the time House and Powers of X came out, and it just by the time I came back into comics, it had only been a year or two, but there was already 200 issues to read
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
how intertwined they were. And like that made it really daunting, but it made it really amazing. That's I've got like I don't usually go for like entire series. I grab like I've got randomly the Mark Waid Daredevil. I've just got Immortal Hulk. Like, I just grab the parts of runs that I really or the parts
Okay.
of bigger series that I love, just because otherwise it gets too massive. But
Yep.
I've bought every single Krakoan era hardcover, and like the only like, I launched a podcast for the first time again with young kids in the house because I wanted to talk about Krakoa. Sins of Sinister may be my favorite crossover of the like century. Like since like I mean you go into the 90s and there's
Really?
stuff I love, but I fucking loved Sins of Sinister. I thought it was the best execution of a like potential future we've seen since Age of Apocalypse. Like I can't think of another
Yeah.
example in any Marvel or DC where it just was a alternate future. I was like, I just wish I could live in this for 6 months and like have every book tie into it. And I think part of that was that they kept it limited to those 9 books, so it left you wanting more. Whereas like every other time they give us too many books and we see too much of the world, and suddenly it's less intriguing. And I but even Axe, I really enjoyed. There was just so much so good
I
about
really liked
Krakoa for
Axe.
so
Axe was
long.
so big. It was such a. I think Axe is probably my favorite crossover, probably since AVX. I know AVX is like controversial, but I actually really liked Avengers vs. X-Men.
Yeah.
I like seeing Scott Summers push to his limits. Uh, I like the moral grayness of like how much of him killing Xavier was him and how much of it was the Phoenix. And
Yeah.
like,
They dropped the ball after the fact, I feel like, with that,
oh yeah,
but it
always.
was a cool moment in it. Yeah.
That's always how it goes, right? You had the original Morrison run where they created this whole like really dark, like vicious Magneto, and then
Oh, it was an imposter.
the day after they're like, oh yeah, like literally one panel in a comic where Xavier's like, yeah, your imposter said this, and I was like, what the fuck?
Well, and wasn't that I need to go back and look. There was something about like they released issues out of order so that the reveal ended up being even less like they didn't have a climactic plan for the reveal, but it came across even more anticlimactic because yeah, it was like an offhand reference to like, oh yeah, you're an imposter, and they never explained it until like 3 weeks later when the issue that actually explained the
Yeah,
whole thing came out or something. It was yeah, that was such a
it,
ball dropped and yeah.
yeah. I was look. I'm not a fan of uh, the like genocidal aspect of Magneto during the Morrison run, but like that was a huge run in general. I mean, like the deep dive into Wolverine Weapon Plus program, all that stuff. I think even though he was left kind of in the dark right before the Krakoan era, uh Phantom X is like one of the dopest characters conceptually to have been
So
created in the last 30 years.
I don't know if this is getting too into like continuity for your show, but Phantom X is running around again, right? Because at the beginning,
Yes.
Hickman's era, Professor X was in his body, but then like his first resurrection, we got real Phantom X back, and he's still kicking, right?
Phantom X was back beforehand. Phantom X at the end of, I just flipped through the was it the extraordinary run or whatever it was.
Oh,
Right before
they were on back then. Okay,
right at the end when he like frees the X-Men team that helped him get into that body, he
yeah.
like gives them like a gift, like a subconscious something, and like blah blah blah, everyone, and he's like, Gambit, I give you a mission He's like, Phantom X is out there, something something. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
Okay, that's neat, I guess. I love Phantom. So knowing what I know now as a man in my 30s about like anti-Semitism and kind of the portrayal of Magneto in there, yeah, like Morrison dropped the ball. I don't
yeah,
know if that says something about Morrison or just that like early 2000s understanding of
yeah.
geopolitics. I don't know. As a like 14-year-old kid, New X-Men was the greatest thing I'd ever read. I loved it. It was one of the few, it and Ultimate Spider-Man were like the ones I was spending my hard-earned allowance on every month. I loved Grant Morrison's
Are you
X-Men as it came
watching
out.
the
Yeah.
97?
Yeah. Oh my God, that
So
episode was so
so
good.
we are gonna very briefly dive into spoilers for episode 5. So if you haven't seen it yet, please keep that in mind. How the hell? Because that was the entire Genoshan era, like Magneto running Genosha. That was 1990, what, 7 or 8, 1998, all the way through the year 2000, all compacted into one episode. As far as
Yeah,
Genosha, that entire, I mean, I do absolutely love the different perspective we got of that event. Like, we, in the original comic, we got a couple like firsthand shots, but it was actually from the shot of the Sentinel, because we
yeah,
saw Magneto, but we saw Magneto from the outside, and was like, we saw the death toll in numbers because we saw Xavier and we saw the numbers change in Cerebra. And this was from the ground. You see people getting vaporized. It was such a more visceral experience of that event.
absolutely.
Holy shit. Like, I almost broke at work. Like, I started crying. I was just like,
Well,
when you hear that final line from Remy, I'm just like, I'm literally like this, like I've got my headset in, and I'm just like not turning around because there are tears on my face. Like,
where do we go? Because they've confirmed season two at the very least, right? And
right.
then theoretically, they haven't said that's the final season. They've just they upped for two at the same time. Are we getting like the X-Men 90s X-Men version of Krakoa eventually? Like I feel like at the pace they're going, by the end of
I
season two, like they almost have to hit.
I feel like we are, just because they did that in the X-Men 92 comic. It
Which
was
was
all
really fun. That
Yeah,
was a fun
it was a fun turn. And the other reason that I think we are, who the hell calls Moira to be on that council? I saw Moira and I was like, Krakoa.
yeah,
That was my
that's
first
true.
response.
No one gave a shit about Moira. No one truly cared about Moira until Hickman
I was like,
completely
you're gonna
changed her
call
character.
Moira and Banshee onto the Banshee's gonna be on this council, the ruling council of Genosha. Banshee. Look, I like Sean. Banshee's a good character. Banshee. Stop it.
The only thing that's gonna be, and I don't want to say it's a bummer, but there's no way they go with like the analogs they went with in that XCII comic.
No,
Like
no, no.
they had so much fun with like who they put on the five and who they like.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
just that was such a good book. That was
It
so much
was it
fun.
was like trying to tell the same story with a completely different cast, and I really appreciated it. But
Well,
like,
and
they don't.
it was self-aware enough. Like it played it for comedy most of the time, and yet
Yeah.
I mean it was an emotional story, but it definitely knew what its audience wanted, and it played up the humor in a really good way.
What I the one question I the one so the couple things. The show is so freaking good. I've loved every moment of it. Cyclops getting his shine and really letting people
Yeah,
see Cyclops in his prime. I was like, this is, motherfucker's been missing out. This is Scott Summers. This is peak Scott Summers. This is who he's always been. You guys just haven't
yeah.
been watching. You have been watching, you haven't been reading. Because that's my favorite character. That's my favorite character because I'm a firm believer in that someone has to be in charge and someone has to make the calls. And he knows that. And then at the same time, he will put his own fucking life on the line for the team, no matter what.
Clarify, favorite like X-Men character or just like favorite character, like
No,
period?
no,
Where
X-Men. It
oh,
that
okay.
the like broader comic book is so hard. It
Yeah,
used to be Spider-Man, but I'm just bored of the constant reset to poor, broke, like broken alone Peter Parker, like working at the paper. I'm so disgustingly sick of that. Like,
yeah.
my favorite run was the Dan Slott run, where he had a fucking really good job that utilized his scientific knowledge and skill, and like then he also did superhero shit, modified his suit with the technology at his work. I was like, this is the shit.
But even
Like,
then, they kept teasing. You knew it was gonna reset eventually, and like that's Dan Slott's thing. He always says like, "I have to put all the toys back in the toy box," and it's like, well, or you make new toys, like,
yeah,
or you just
yeah,
expand the
right,
toy box. But
right. Make a bigger toy box, god damn it.
yeah,
I can't stand the reset. That's why when everyone, like when we were just about to hit fall and everyone was like, "Oh, I'm so excited to get back to the mansion." I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you people? We got like 100 years of fucking the mansion. I'm so sick of the mansion." Like,
I was really proud. People were more divided than I thought that. Like there was more people on the like, fuck no, you don't kill Krakoa side.
yeah,
I not everyone bought into the marketing, and I was so happy about that because yeah, I'm not ready for it, and I don't
I,
think the story was ready for it.
no,
I think
absolutely not.
they either should have done Hickman's original plan of just like because that was why he left was he wanted to end it back when he left, or they needed to keep it going. Like once you expand it to this 4 year epic, like you can't just kill it. Like they needed another few years at least, if not
Yeah,
just permanent. Like how do you not make Krakoa just the new thing? That's the new toy
it
box was what I
it just
wholeheartedly
makes
believe.
so much sense. And the like, hey, we saw how bad things can get. Like, there's such an easy way to continue this and write new stuff. The
Yeah.
human governments are like, hey, when we let other motherfuckers come in and try to like do something about the mutant problem, it turns into a real dangerous situation. So now maybe we have various governments trying to create their own mutant solution, but there's no fucking Orcus. There's no like massive organization. And then you can have different work. But my preferred thing when they were like, well, what do you want to do next? And I was like, fuck it, send them all to to Araco, right?
Yeah.
Say, hey, you guys wouldn't even let us have this own thing. We built this island away from all you motherfuckers, and you wouldn't even let us have that. So fuck off. We're gonna go. And then you have, I don't know, a year or two of just mutant stories on a mutant
Yep.
planet. And you can have, you have your Nova, you have your people showing up, and then humans get into some shit that only mutants can get them out of, and then they gotta make the call like,
Yep.
hey buddy, we miss you.
Well, and if they gave it time, if they gave us 3 years of them isolated, and then that was their summer event, was the thing that was finally big enough that the humans finally agreed to reach out to the mutants, that would have been such an epic story because people would have been salivating for it by that point.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And then it's like every time you put a Krakoan seed in the president's office. And
yep,
every time you just make sure you see it. And whenever it shows up in various books, President's Captain America, you see the seed. You see the little flower. And then you just see that moment, mid whatever the hell's going on, and you just see the president being like, we need them, and just puts it down and the fucking gate sprouts up. Like,
yep,
what a fucking moment. Like,
that would have been amazing.
that's the it's that whole thing out of Ten of Swords where they all just spew out of the gates, and I was like, fuck yeah.
So here's probably the biggest like things will never be as fun, or it'll be really hard to ever make things as fun for me again. Is there's no explanation for how they put the lid completely back on the jar. Like if you ever have the five together again, why would they not just try again? Like
Or
there
any
is
variety
no
of five.
yeah, there is no valid explanation for like you could do whatever. Oh, but it's got sinister tampering with the genes or whatever. But like, so you start fresh. Like you have an unlimited time. You just build a new fucking Cerebro with a brand new database that's got no way of it to have been tampered with, and you fucking try again. Like
Yep.
there's no valid explanation to completely separate them from what they found during Krakoa. So it makes them look stupid. It makes them look like oh we failed once so we're never gonna try for immortality again. Really, you give up that
Right.
easily on immortality?
Right. We're sort of like, what, starting in June, we're gonna ignore the waiting room. We're just gonna pretend it doesn't
Yep.
exist anymore. We
Yeah.
know it does. All of us do. Every mutant on Krakoa does. But we're just gonna pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No,
It's just
absolutely not. No, and that's the thing is, you can even to say that, oh, well, let's say you kill Egg, right? Okay, you could kill Egg, but we know through, if you read the Extreme X-Men run from the early 2000s, Peak Rogue, which I would say she's gotten to Peak Rogue, Peak
yeah.
Rogue has instant recall to all powers she's ever touched.
Yep.
And you could say, all right, well, before her like control of her abilities, before anything before that is wiped, yeah, but she's touched literally everyone since.
Yeah.
Like that was the gag, is that she was just doing like massive combos and shit. She could be the 5-in-1 if she fucking needs to. So
Yep.
like, and she's definitely absorbed egg since. So it's like, cool. Let's just have Rogue be egg for a week.
Yeah.
Like
It's
you
just
could
there's
you could
no.
do it's such a silly thing to, like I said, you can't ignore the building blocks are there. Like you said, why would they not try again? It makes no sense logically, let alone fucking narratively. Like it makes no logical sense that this group of people who, like, what are they going to say? Well, the politics is what ruined it. Okay, cool. Come up with a different fucking political system. Come up with a different, like, make it truly democratic. You have an infinite amount of telepaths. You could have a perfect democracy, a perfect, perfect vote. Every
Yep.
person of capable thought can vote because you can
When
inform
we
them everything relevant to the thing.
when we were doing our X-Men podcast, me and Bulk Ranger, if you don't follow him on your social media, follow him. He's a great dude.
Absolutely.
When we sat down and we're talking about like what Fall of X meant when they first announced it, and we were full of copium. We were well, it's clearly like a play on words. It's gonna be Fall of Xavier. It's the fall of the oligarchy. Like they've been had this secret, not secret, this very public, but this council making all the decisions for him. And yeah, it was exactly what we were predicting. Was that Fall of X would be bad, but not cataclysmic, and by the end of it, like they would rebuild a different government. It was exactly what we kept saying. We kept wholeheartedly believing. I believed it straight up through like 2/3 of the Fall of X, even like as Cyclops was in fucking shackles, and we were just watching death after death, and it was the announcement of fall of the house and rise of the powers. And I was like, that's where I finally just was like fully accepting, like, no, they're really doing it. They're ripping the band-aid. Like I couldn't
Well,
believe it.
the other thing is, and I really think you're right. I really think they're going to bring back some variety of resurrection. However, it's going to be used. Maybe it'll be used differently, and I'm into that. Like, give me a different narrative use for it, sure. But like, I don't know if you've read the Wolverine run, which takes place after X Force 50, but before Fall One,
Yeah,
like the Sabretooth War. Have you seen any
I
of
have.
those?
I've read it. Yeah.
Some of those motherfuckers have to come back.
Oh yeah. No,
There are rabid Akihiro fans on the internet. Like you can't not bring Fang back. Like absolutely not.
I still don't accept the Fang name, by the way. He's docking to me forever, but uh I don't know. There's just something about the actual pitch of the relaunch that is so disingenuous to me when like I know every time you ever relaunch comics, you got to sell it as this new thing. Like it's
Yeah.
always like, oh man, we're breaking new ground. But to follow up what Krakoa was, actual new ground with like, we're breaking new ground. There's three teams and they're spread out. Okay.
There's three
Give me
teams.
more info.
There's an X Force and an X Factor team. Wait, hold on. What exactly are you doing? It's like
Yeah.
they were like, wait, what can we do? When was the X-Men the most popular? Early 2000s. All right, let's make all the books from the early 2000s, and then also add Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like it's all they did. Is it's like NYX? Who asked for that? Who asked for an NY? So is that what's that going to be? Like just them living in New York, just hanging out? But it's like,
Like
and then it's like you show me Laura with a goddamn hoodie costume. I fucking because I was like, I guarantee you this was designed by the same person who designed that fucking shitty Miles Morales costume, the hoodie costume for Miles Morales. That shit was stupid too. Like it might be stylishly cool, like stylistically it might be cool, like as far as fashion goes, but you don't fight in a hoodie. That's too much shit to grab onto. Like,
say what you will about Tom Taylor, but the amount of growth he gave Laura just for like how far they've dragged her back down into like she was Wolverine and like she should at this point in her career have equal claim to the title and like there's just something about them clutching back every piece of development she has had to the point that yeah, she's now just the NYX ancillary character in a hoodie is just so frustrating to me because
Yeah.
I love me some Laura.
If they don't call her Wolverine in that, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. Because
Oh,
that was
I
one of my favorite moments from the Krakoan era. And when Cyclops is like X-23 and she's like, actually, it's Wolverine. And Logan's like, you tell him, kiddo. That was a beautiful fucking moment for me.
I'm not like the world's biggest Logan fan, but I've just been dying for a true like Wolverine's family book. I just feel like that dynamic because yeah, that moment was so fun and just anytime they get together, the end of Exterminators when uh she's getting ready and he's basically like I get out of her way like it's the proud papa Wolverine is so fun and we don't see it enough and like why wouldn't you have done that instead of this NYX bullshit? Just
Yeah.
give us Honey Badger, Logan, and Laura, and you can throw Akihiro in there if you want, but like those three as like a little family unit would be so goddamn fun. And we got an Unlimited that was more of like a Batman Family Adventures tone that was them on a road trip, but like a true like full blown comic with them would be so goddamn fun.
Yeah, absolutely it would. Absolutely it would. That's the thing is they've been listening to I think the loudest elements of the fandom, and unfortunately those are rarely the fans of the current status quo.
Well, that's
And
your reset always has to involve your biggest characters, right? Like you look
sure.
at New 52, probably the most famous kind of
Oof.
I would say failed, but it has its fans. But like they decided to basically get rid of everyone that was a legacy or an ancillary character, and that's what you do. You do that with every reboot because your hope with a reboot is to bring in new fans and bring back old fans, and the way to do that theoretically is to use the most recognizable characters. But you're never going to get new recognizable characters if all you do is wipe them out every time you
Yep.
need a reset.
Yep.
You have to build
Absolutely.
on those characters.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of really interesting characters during the Krakoan era, and a lot of interesting approaches to characters, like giving of all people Fabian Cortez something of something resembling a redemption arc. I wouldn't say it was
Yeah.
a true full redemption, but like you kind of got a feel for Fabian Cortez at the end of it. I was like, okay, all right. Like I didn't think this was possible. So to give somebody like that something like that, I hope they don't just push the reset button and start writing everyone like it's 2002, because I'm not here for that. It's my problem is that I'm a diehard X-Men person. I'm still gonna read it. I'm still gonna fucking collect it, but like this will be my Austin run. A lot of people have a lot of fucking words to say about the Austin run. I actually think it's good, except for the weird like pedo jokes. That wasn't a big fan of that.
Yeah.
but like but like the Draco, I loved the Draco way before it was cool to love the
Yeah.
Draco. So everybody all of a sudden I was like, where the fuck were you guys? Where were you
I
guys
think
6 months ago?
I'm gonna give all the number ones a chance. Like I can say like I'm done with it. I'm gonna read the first issue of everything just because
Of course.
it's in my core. And I could see myself really sticking with the Gale run, even though, if you follow a single X-Men book, you're always gonna get stuck eventually catching up on the others because
Yep.
there will be the next X over. Like they will have another X-Men centric crossover and you're gonna have to
And
catch
they've
up with
already
them.
said it. They've already flat out
Yeah.
said it. They said that all the books work into whatever the Phoenix book is building up. So
Yep.
they're already building their next crossover, probably next summer's event or this winter's event or whatever.
I hope they stick with this. And I guess I don't, I guess I'm not super invested. But what I really liked was you always got a Krakoan centered event, except for the year that Axe happened, because like that was so X-Men centric. But you got this smaller X-Men crossover, and then they would also be involved with the big summer event. But like it wasn't always like through Krakoa, it wasn't always tied to the larger
Yeah.
universe. And it meant that there was always at least one crossover I was excited for. Like even if the summer event was complete ass, like I could trust like, you know what, I'm gonna enjoy Hellfire. I'm gonna enjoy X of Swords. I'm gonna enjoy Ten of Swords. I'm gonna enjoy Inferno. Like I really, really loved Sins. The 10 Lives and 10 Deaths was probably the one that was a little rougher for me, but even it had its enjoyable moments, and
Yeah.
I I would love to see them keep that going. I know we always have kind of had that, but I feel like other than kind of the Schism era, it was never at that same rapid pace where you had like they all came together and then would split back apart and then come back together almost annually. And I would love to keep that pace.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because to have really good runs of a story. Like I am one of those people that misses the like random one issue one off.
Yeah.
I'm a guy who misses that. I don't love the right for the trade. Even though I'm a trade collector, I'm not a big fan of the right for the trade mentality. Whereas like if you know it's going to be 6 issues in a story and you're going to write 6 issues. Well, can you tell it in five? Can you tell it in five and it be more like better paced and be more
Oh
exciting?
yeah.
Can you? Because a lot of times you can. Because there's been things like I always go back to it when I talk about stuff like this because I really felt it was a truly disappointing climax. Was Fear itself like
Yeah.
the fight with or no was Fear itself was Original Sin, whichever one where he fought the or the serpent, the Midgard serpent. That Midgard serpent
That's for itself, I think. I think.
that Midgard serpent fight was so fucking boring. And
Yeah.
like I finished it, I was like, wait, is was that it? Was that the finale? I was literally shocked because I was like, that was a it was like a 9 panel. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't there was no big splashes or no, I was like, the fuck fight is this? Like what is this? How is this the finale? Like this could have been an issue shorter and way better tightly packed.
Well, you're totally right, but like the cynical thing that I immediately thought of when you said like, "Oh, can you tell it in five?" is I don't know if you have noticed in the last couple of years as like paper prices have gone up and everything, their goal issue count has shifted from 6 to 5. Like all of Marvel's trades, especially, dropped an issue. Like suddenly, instead of all shooting for every arc to be exactly 6 issues, they're all shooting for every arc to be exactly 5 issues, and then they sell it for the same price for with one less issue in there, and it's really funny to me that we went through that era of decompress, 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 and now it's like okay, recompress, recompress, recompress. But it's not done like in genuine respect to the story. It's done in a like still shoot for the trade. They're still aiming for it. It's just the goal the goalpost has moved because paper
Yeah.
prices went up, and it's sad.
Yeah, the margin, and that's why I think that's probably why they're talking about uh per issue pricing again, and they're starting to talk. Oh, we're gonna have like this baseline price for most issues, and then we're gonna have like the special issues are gonna be the $1 more. Like they're talking about that
Them
again.
having them Marvel having different prices for the same page count now and being more like forthright about it is so weird to me because that was always the big thing when they started pushing the $4 because for a long time $3 was like the red line. You didn't cross $3 for
These
anything.
that was DC's whole thing during
Yeah.
New 52.
Hold the
The
line. Yep.
hold the line.
And when both companies started pushing the $4, it was always, well, there's 8 extra pages, so that makes it okay. And there was times when a special issue would come out and it would have less pages and be the higher price, but it was always kind of a like they just hoped it would fly under the radar kind of thing. And now with stuff like Mortal 4 is a big one right now, and I think I want to say the new Daredevil went that route. They're 22 story pages and they're the higher price, and that's just they're just calling them their like well they're the not prestige, what is the term they're using? The frontline books, like they're the important ones, so they're gonna cost a little more, and that's just the way it is. And it's just so
Oh,
weird to me they're taking that
geez.
approach. And like it on the one hand, I like the honesty, I like the forthrightness,
Sure.
but it's so weird to me from having lived through this as long as I have that like we're at that point. We're at that point where there's open and honest about we care more about that book, so we're gonna charge you $1 more.
Well, that's the funny thing, right? So are those 4.99?
Yeah, they're $5 books instead of $4 books with
Wow,
the
for
22
22
story pages.
pages.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's truly wild to me.
And like
Because
I'm
now
really enjoying Immortal Core. I'm a bit of an Al Ewing fanboy, but like I'm trade waiting to buy it. I don't know how much you talk about sailing the seas on here, but like I'm not dropping that money on a single issue for
No, no,
a
I can't.
prestigious book. Like,
I don't collect singles. I've just recently broken that rule for an early 2000 or no late 90s mini series that was an indie book that I've literally heard no one talk about. It was called Prophecy of the Soul Sorcerer. I remember seeing ads for it, and I was just so in love with the artwork for the covers that
yeah,
I always wanted to own it. And I saw a collection of the volume two, and I was like, I fucking have to buy this. And this is the first time I've bought singles on purpose to own them in like
yeah.
probably 15, 20 years. Like it's been a while. But like
See,
it's
I dip my
it
toes. I don't have an LCS, so I put together a
oh that
discount comic
sucks.
book. Yeah, I go through discount comic book service every month, and like most of what I order are trades and hardbacks, but uh you pay every month for your shipping, and so like I always made sure I'm following at least one comic and usually a few in singles, just so that there's always a monthly order, even if like there's nothing I'm ordering like hardback wise that month. And but I am so selective about it for just that reason. Like, and eventually run out of storage. Like, digital is such a lifesaver for that reason. I
Yeah.
follow indies. Indies, I get physical, like true, like Kickstarter indies,
Yeah, yeah.
just because I know how much like that can swing, uh, like a person's like faith that they're like the real deal. Because
Yeah.
I think, as horrible as it sounds, like in the era of anyone can throw up a webtoon, like I've seen people that it's not until they've got their book published on like paper and like people are actually like buying it from them, that you feel like, oh, I'm actually doing the thing. And so for
Yeah.
that reason, I try to set aside a little money every month to be like, all right, like that's a really cool Kickstarter. This is this person's first book. I'm gonna buy it just so that they like I want them to have those numbers. And so I've got a couple long boxes worth. Man, as a comic book like heavy reader, it is so hard to follow, like to collect single issues. You just run out of
It
space so goddamn quick.
so fast, so fast. I had the when I finally sold off my singles collection, I had 36 short boxes in a
Yeah,
closet. And like just taking that out of that closet freed up so much fucking space. Like
yeah,
and that wasn't even, I mean those were some X-Men, like probably all of 90s X-Men. I think most of 90s X-Force. Like it wasn't everything. It certainly
no,
wasn't what I read now. It wasn't probably as much as I have in trades now. But like I sold it, and pennies on the dollar kind of thing. So it sucked. It hurt to like sell it for that low of an amount, like for how many books there were and like how many complete runs I knew I had. That like I'm like, they gave me like I think it ended up being like 10 cents per book average. And I'm like, I know you're selling those for more. Even if you sell them all as quarter books,
yeah,
how much more money are you making off me? And like I know
yeah.
for a fact you're gonna be selling some of those for way more. And I was just like,
That's the kind of thing where you just have to like convince yourself my time is worth more than what I could get if I sat down and I nickel and dime for the shit.
yes,
I've done
yes,
that multiple times where I know I basically gave away something that someone's gonna flip for a whole lot more. But you know what? Either they have an encyclopedic knowledge and they know it right away, or they're gonna sit and they're gonna put so much time and effort into it that I'm just not willing to do. Power to
right.
them. I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Trading off your time is way worth it. Way worth it.
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
even the stuff that I'm trying to move now, like I'm some of the trades, like I've decided to go omnis and stuff like that. So I'm like we're getting rid of some of the old collections. And the amount of time, like, I probably deleted 1,000 emails from eBay of this has been relisted, this has been relisted, because like certain things don't sell certain weeks. People aren't looking for things certain weeks. So it's like I've had a book
Yep.
relist 7 times, and then on the seventh time it sells. So it's
Yeah.
like it's been sitting there for 7 weeks, and now it finally someone's like, "Oh, actually, I'm looking for this. This is a good price."
Yeah, it's such a weird game. And when I was in my 20s, I loved it because it was like extra spending money. Like if I had a a Omni and I found out, oh man, that Omni's out of print and it's worth 3 times what I paid for it, I'm totally gonna go on eBay and I'm gonna flip it. And like, but here I am, like I said, 35. I've got I until a couple of weeks ago I had 3 kids under 5. Like there's just so little time in the day, and like I'd rather spend it doing something I love. And it
Yeah,
takes us right back to the comic creation. Like, that is something that doesn't feel like I'm devoting my time to something. And like it's the
Yeah,
only thing in my life where it's not like, okay, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done.
right.
It's actually enjoyable and like the use of my time to flip something. My dad, he loves when he stumbles on something in the garage sale, then get it up on Craigslist. And I mean, he's 76. He's got all the time in the world. Like that's the least like out of all the ways I can make money, that is the
Yeah,
least the one I want to devote time to the least. I got no interest anymore.
agreed. Agreed. I'm the same way. No, yeah, I think that the production of the comic is definitely the thing to put your time and energy into. I'm excited. I'm excited to read it. I was trying to read it before we started this recording, but it's such a massive podcast, such a massive PDF file that I decided because I'm a G, I've got all the storage space that I can spare. I'm going to hold the big file, not the little
Yeah.
file that you offered, because you were like, "Hey, this is a pretty big file. Maybe you guys want this one for reading." And I was like, "Nah, I don't need that. I got multiple screens and hard drives. I
Yeah,
got this." And now it won't load.
so for the audience, my comic uses like halftone coloring and just I produced it at 600 DPI, which was probably a mistake because all printers run at 300 anyways. So the art was getting downscaled no matter what, but I was brand new to it. And so when I sold it on the Kickstarter, I wanted to make sure because these are the people that pre-ordered it, they got whatever experience they wanted. So I did a giant, I think, is it 2.5 gigs? It's huge. I don't remember how big it
It's
ended
a
up being.
massive file. Hold on, let me see.
Uh, PDF, and then
Yeah, yeah, just about two and a half.
one, yeah, and then one scaled down to about 20% of that, so it's still like a 300 meg. Like even the downscaled as small as I could without giving up enough visuals was still huge. And then it's up on Global Comics, which basically just displays the PDF for you. I gave everyone a code for that. If anyone here wants to check it out, that's where I'd recommend you buy it if you want to read it digitally, because that also you can also download the PDF from there. So if you buy it on Global Comics, you can either read it right there, or it'll give you a downloadable PDF. Um, and then May 1st, we are launching issue 2, which I feel like is a huge improvement. Like I've said, like I'm not trying to. I feel like I've talked too much shit about the first one, where I'm like, oh man, the second one is so much better. The second one's so much better. I am really fucking proud of it. I just in packing orders and stuff lately, I've just been, because you forget, you get so deep into whatever you're working on now, like you kind of lose track of how much you've evolved. And issue 2 is kind of funny because I feel like you see the evolution more through it. Like the shit in the front of the book looks way more like issue 1, and the stuff in the back looks way more like the third issue. And I feel like the third issue is all coming together like chef's kiss. But I'm putting issue 2 up on Kickstarter May 1st. It was originally going to be 2 and 3, but some of that back end stuff is just so hard to get. So I'm launching just one issue. Um, I'm very excited about it. irrepressiblecomics.com. And then I just announced today, the day we're recording it. I don't know how long you take to edit and get up.
This will be
So
out
I
Thursday, so
it's up there now. Okay, Thursday. So just Sunday I announced um a call for submissions for I'm so fucking excited. An anthology. It's going to be a free anthology, but it's called the 24 short stories around the state of Jefferson. And I don't know, are you a Simpsons man? Were you like, did you watch Simpsons back in the 90s?
oh yeah.
So my all-time favorite episode is called 22 short films from Springfield, and
Oh yeah.
it's basically every minute was a separate like story about someone else around town. And so
I love that episode.
this is kind of my tribute to that, where I put out a call for pitches, and so one of the characters has to go on a quest, right? So he wakes up, and uh, he's his name's Fletcher. He's the punk rock teen. If you just flip through the book, so he's got a blue mohawk, and he's really a tertiary character in the main story, but he wants a breakfast burrito. He goes downstairs, throws one in the microwave. There's no power. So he decides, oh man, I got to go down to the gas station and go get one. And as he sets off to go across town, not realizing the reason the power's out is there's a forest fire approaching town. And like here in California, we have these they're called PSPSs. They're every time there is a big fire in the area, PG&E is allowed to just cut off your power for any reason. They just shut it down for the whole community. It can be for 12 hours. It can be for 4 days. It's ridiculous. If you go on any social media about California, it's the number one thing people complain about in the summers is you never know if you're gonna have electricity or not anymore. And so the we are only producing 4 pages of it. Basically, the framing narrative about him going out into the world, and I'm putting the call out for people from all over. Whether it's we've got people who have put together 10, 12, 15 comics that are contributing a page, and we have people who have never fucking written or drawn a thing that are contributing pages to this. And so we're putting out the call for anyone else who's not already kind of in the know, call for submissions to write a single page short story that ties into this overarching event. And it's going to be released for free with the next Kickstarter or maybe the one after. We haven't decided for sure when it's coming out. You can see if you go to irrepressiblecomics.com right now, though, it's got all of the breakdown of what we're looking for in pitches. We are so excited about it. Like I said, we're giving it away digitally for free as like a marketing thing, but we're encouraging people, if you've got your own characters that you want to have like their reactions, because this is such a cartoon world, you can have your characters, like what they would react to if they like stumbled into town, or you can use any of our characters, not any of our characters. We explain on there on the call for pitches, like how we'd like people to use our characters if they want to be involved. And we're going to do a very, very limited print run as just an add-on on the Kickstarter. And so we're compensating every creative team with 2 copies of the book and a quarter-page ad of whatever you want in the back of this book. It has been really cool to get people from all over the industry involved already, because that's what indie comics is like this fucking community of misfits and weirdos and people that are willing to do it for themselves. And I didn't have a like avenue this year. I wanted to do a free comic book day, like collaborative thing, and it just didn't come together. And so this is kind of our take 2 at this, our reattempt at it by doing this anthology. And if you don't want to buy my comic, if you don't want to check it out, if you've made it through almost 2 hours of this podcast, the one thing I would ask you to do is go to the website and check out this call for pitches. And we have a few artists that are willing to work with writers who don't have a full creative team. And I would love to be somebody, some of your audiences, like avenue to write or draw or get involved for the very first time. I think there's nothing cooler than being able to bring someone into the art form that's maybe been scared to before. And if you're gonna tackle something, what's easier than a page, right? Like tell a story in a page and get it out there. So yeah, please check that out.
I'm I'm gonna have to snag one of those prompts. I'm definitely in. You know I'm in. That's
I think
awesome.
I I think it'll be really fun.
That's fantastic. So, Irrepressible Comics, you are that toxic Papa Bear on TikTok.
That's just I guess it takes TikTok won't let you change it back for 2 weeks. That was a response to the AI controversy we alluded to earlier. But
Ah, I was
I
wondering because I'm not on as much as I used to be on TikTok specifically, and just because honestly because of all the like fucking shop ads and shit,
oh
it's
man,
hard to.
shop is obnoxious. Although I got to admit, so I did not get a big enough audience to be part of the creative. Like I can't get paid by TikTok through the like normal means yet, and the shop ads, as annoying as they are, because I'm selling my comic, I feel like this is a life hack. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing this, but so when you set up the shop, if you set it on your like real account, you get all these restrictions. If you are selling a good, like you can't use certain sound clips, you're held to higher standards about like doing stitches and shit. But if you make a separate account, that's why I'm still that nerdy Papa Bear. So Irrepressible Comics, I have as a separate TikTok account that is a seller
Aha.
account, and so all of my comics get listed there, and then you set a commission, and so I sell through that toxic or that nerdy Papa Bear. and I just attach my comic to those videos, and it makes the distribution of the money funky because like like $7 goes to the Irrepressible Comics account, and $1 goes to the That Nerdy Papa Bear as like the affiliate marketer or whatever. But it's
Sure.
all still then comes back together in the same bank
Right.
account. But what selling it that way does is it tricks TikTok into thinking I'm successfully doing their like selling, even though like I'm only selling my own shit. I'm not selling other people's shit, but it thinks I'm like a good affiliate marketer because I'm successfully selling my
Ah,
comic through them. And so when I go in and I click the like, oh, I kind of liked the look of that snow cone machine. Send me a snow cone machine for free. It'll send me it. And so like I feel like that's the one way I'm getting paid by TikTok is like I'm getting the free shit when I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take a free sample. Oh yeah, I'll take a free sample. Because before I started selling my comic, I had no like it wouldn't. I'd get turned down every time I wanted one because I wasn't making any sales. And I don't think I've sold a single thing that I've gotten a sample of. But because I'm selling my comic, it tricks TikTok into giving me free shit. And so
I like
in that
that.
way, like that's good enough. Like I'll accept all those annoying ass shop ads if it means I get free stuff.
Yeah, why not, right? Why not? That's fantastic. That's you know
So
what? Maybe
this was fucking fun. I can't
this
believe we
is
sat and
awesome.
chatted for 2 hours. So
This is awesome. That's why I like doing this because it's something always comes up. There's always something to talk about.
well, I had completely forgotten that you were like along the ride when I was doing my original Krakoa binge. So like you got
Oh
to
yeah,
witness as I was like,
I've been
oh
around.
man, that
Hey man, you were the one. We beefed for a minute too. We beefed for a minute because
yeah, I don't even remember what it was about. What was it
you
about?
Star Wars. You kicked me out of the Star Wars fandom. I used to tell this story because I thought it was hilarious because you said I couldn't I forget how you phrased it. It ended up me I was saying that uh I like Star Trek a lot more, and then you're like you made fun of the fact that I said I like Star Trek a lot more, but you call it like you like he's like say you're a fan of Star Wars, but you say that you're a bigger fan of something else. He's like, that doesn't sound like a fan. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not a fan. And what's funny, since that conversation, I have gotten, and not because of that conversation, I've just
Right. It just happened.
in watching Star Wars, I've found myself less and less excited about the like mainline shows. And like the only stuff that's been interesting to me is the stuff that's like way off. Like the new thing, was it the Acolyte or whatever it's called? That's
That does look
interesting to me because
sick.
that's like way past, like way in the past. So it's not the fucking Skywalker saga, and I don't care anymore. Like I had when what was it? When Obi-Wan came out, I was like, nah. Like I saw the trailer and I was like, nothing. No, there's not an ounce of me that wants to watch
Yeah.
this. And I
I
was like, eh. The only thing that still like hooks me is like visions. I want to see
yeah.
different stuff. I want to see stuff besides the. It's like I'm diehard Star Trek. I'm gonna watch everything Star Trek. I watch fan projects, all this other shit. And Star
Okay.
Wars, all I want from Star Wars is anything but the main story.
Before we hang up, I need to circle back to how mad I am at Lower Decks being canceled. But I don't remember the specifics of that Star Wars conversation, but it is pretty funny that like you say that because I was super deep into Star Wars. Like I was actually Star Wars talk before I was comic talk. Like I was super into the books and all that shit. And it was the TikTok Star Wars community that killed my Star Wars fandom. Like they are just the
I can
most
understand that.
toxic group of people. And like
It's
I watched Andor. I'm excited to watch Acolyte, and like that's about it. Like I've fallen off Star Wars so hard, and it's really funny. I can't believe that's what we beefed over. Like that's really funny in hindsight.
that's yeah, that's it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Like I was trying to ride so hard. It's funny because a lot of the people that like have blocked me for reasons that I don't know, honestly. It's been
Yeah.
stuff where it's like I try to go back to their page and I'm no longer able to. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then I, realized that I've been blocked because people still talk about them. And I was like, oh, I guess they blocked me. I don't know why. But it was people who I was like backing up when they were when they were like defending Rey Skywalker. And I was
Yeah.
like, I fully support Rey Skywalker. And I would back them, and they would block me eventually for whatever reason.
But you backed him in the wrong way or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I don't know, man. It's that you're never X enough for somebody. Whatever it is, you're never enough in some way for somebody. It's hilarious, but like
Well, and
no,
like there's such a degree to which being full of rage is the only way to get views on that app. And then but then it becomes ingrained. Like you have to let shit go. Like honestly, that's what I need to do with the AI thing. I will be 100% honest. I need to just fucking let it go. But because of like my relationship with that person beforehand
Yeah,
and the origins of that toxic papa bear, that like his apology turned into them calling me, yeah, but like I need to fucking let it go, and it's so hard to do when you're like embedded in this like TikTok where like you see people that like you respect reacting to their shitty thing they said that was like negative about you, and like it's so hard to avoid, but that's all you can do. Like you just have to walk away and just be like, all right, like clearly there's a disagreement here, and like whatever, fucking who cares? I've never even met this person in real life. We talked once a week. Why do I
right.
give a shit if like there's this one-sided feud or whatever. But Star Trek, and this could be our last thing because I know it's even later your time zone than it is mine. So Lower Decks is not just my favorite, like, oh, it's my favorite thing, like since Paramount took over Star Trek. Uh, it is at least for the last like 7, 8 years my favorite TV show on like period. Like I
Oh
fucking
wow.
love Lower Decks. Lower Decks has been such a breath of fresh air. It brings together so much of what I love that it's got kind of a Futurama tone to it with like the humor that's more sincere. Like because it was one of the guys behind Rick and Morty, when it launched, I was real trepidatious that it was going to be like, oh, it's Rick and Morty, but the Star Trek like costume on.
Yeah,
But it's got such a sincere, like the characters actually love, like have this love, but it's
yeah,
it's got jokes that just hit, and it works. Like I can show it to my wife who doesn't watch Star Trek, and she gets just as much enjoyment out of it, even though there's gonna be 100 in jokes every episode that you like. She doesn't get any of the jokes about Star Trek, but she doesn't need to because there's enough actual, just sincere like love for storytelling as a medium. That Strange New Worlds episode that was a crossover was fucking brilliant. I am
they're
so
saying they've teased that there's going to be another one, and I'm so excited for that.
There definitely should be. I was so upset when I saw that they announced this week that uh, Lower Decks was getting canceled, and then they soften the blow by being like, but we also renewed Strange New Worlds for season 4. And it was like, why would you not lead with the good news? Like, why would you rip my heart out and then give me some kind
Yeah,
of like not quite as good of as a Lower Decks renewal, but I'm loving Strange New Worlds.
Strange
But
New World, it's so good. I genuinely, very genuinely, I was like, I don't know about this musical episode, man. I really that can be a super hit or miss, and also like this feels like such a serious kind of show that I don't know if it's gonna work. And then as I'm watching it, and the execution was so fucking good,
my
I'm so
ringtone is the Klingon song. I fucking love it when they cut to them and they're like that's my ringtone. I love that so much. But
it's so ridiculously good. I really really I was terrified because I'm like even on shows that I've liked, even on comedy shows that have done musical episodes, I've been kind of like this is kind of cringe. And in the like first song, I like paused it and I was like, no fucking way, right? But then as it went, I was like, this is really fucking good. Like it really, really
so
it's a
I
great
I
show.
already I already revealed my like copium that I just I always try. Here's my oh it's Lower Decks is ending prematurely because they're all getting promoted and we're getting a Middle Decks spinoff. That's all. Like that's my deep in my core. Like I'm hoping that's what we're gonna get is this season's gonna end with like some kind of tease that oh no they're all promoted.
I would love for them, not the whole crew, although I do love the whole crew, but just the four of them.
Yeah,
And maybe the Vulcan. I forget her name, but the like the side friend, the like kind of Mariner's best friend.
yeah.
That group, I want them to cross over into the Academy show. Like into the few like 900 years,
I,
950
I was
years
I
for
was
them in
just
the
gonna
future.
say you need like time warp, but yeah.
Yeah, some sort of 900-year same portal thing, just the other direction. and then it shuts off, it explodes, they can't go back. And I'm like, and
So
then
then we
they
just get
all
them live action for forever.
live action forever. They all go back to ensign, so they all have to go because it's an entirely different era. They know nothing. They know absolutely nothing. So they have to go back, and they're like super seniors in the academy.
I would 100% accept that. My my other like thing I would accept is them getting stuck actually in the command roles. So you take away the current actual like
They
command
have they
crews.
have to.
You either give them a different ship or you give them the Cerritos itself and like have Mariner actually forced to be a captain and have a
Oof,
whole new set of struggles would be
yeah,
really fun too. I could accept either of those, but they can't just end it. And I did see what's his name? The guy that plays Boimler. I feel bad I'm blanking on it.
I
He's
forget
also
his
in The
name because he's on the
Boys.
boys too.
Yeah, but he posted because everything from like Mike McMahon and like all of the statements we had gotten all were kind of like implying that it was a planned ending and production ended months ago.
Yeah.
And
Oh wow,
from what he posted basically said no, it was like they were all shocked at the cancellation, which means we're not getting like a conclusive
oh,
ending, which fucking sucks.
I
So
mean,
that
I hope it's not a cliffhanger. What I
Yeah,
never want.
when you look back, we've had multiple cliffhanger season like
Yeah, and
endings.
I
So
don't want that. I really don't want that because a I have now seen one show that had a severe cliffhanger ending, and it was just because the director was fucking around.
yeah.
And that was Legends of Tomorrow. Uh,
Oh,
that show ended on a massive, like enormous cliffhanger. Like they all got arrested. They all got arrested by like their TVA or whatever.
yeah.
And it was just like the end. Who knows? And I was just like,
I bailed
the
after
fuck,
season
what?
one, so I had no
It's
idea.
dude, that show gets so fucking good.
Does it?
The because it gets so weird as you go in the seasons. It gets weirder and fucking weirder, and that makes it better and better. Like there are
Oh.
gags in season 6, I think, about how they were excluded from the crossover, and they call it the crossover.
Okay, that's pretty fucking meta
I
for a
was
CW
like,
show. That's
I
cool.
I was I like I love that show so much, dude. Like the first two seasons, it was like the first season two, it was really trying to be like the serious, like look into the future thing, but then it just got kookier and kooky. There's a fairy. I mean, John Constantine joins the team in like season 3 or something. It's
Yeah,
a fantastic show. Like
I'll have to go
I
back and watch.
I that's out of everything CW, that's probably my biggest recommend. I did like Black Lightning, but that the writing in the first season is fucking tough. It's tough. It's just, second season is way better, but like it's hard to get through the first season.
Yeah.
Like,
I hung out with Flash for I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 seasons because I wanted Flash on my TV and I watched a lot of Arrow too originally, but just it just got so repetitive. Like every season of the CW verse for a long time, like had followed the exact same arc, and you're like,
yep,
ah, yeah, this is where one of the allies is gonna betray them. Oh, and this is where, and it felt so samey.
yeah. I laughed because like the season 8 came out or whatever of Flash, and the first episode, someone said, I think it was season 8 when I realized this. Season first episode, someone said, "Run, Barry, run." And I was like, God damn it! And then like third or fourth episode, he like failed, and he's got his moody moment. I was like, son of a bitch, they do this every season. And it just
Yeah,
dawned on me in that moment.
yeah.
I was like, and then when season 9 started, I'm like counting the minutes. I'm like, all right, when do we get the Run, Barry, run? I was like, this is it had got so goofy. It had gotten so goofy. And then it's like they set up the Justice League and then just didn't use it. Like there's a lot of drop balls in the CW. Like,
I still feel like the setup for the Justice League was them attempting to like, well, we've already put it in there. You have to give us the characters finally, because that was the thing was they were allowed to play with any DC toys they wanted as long as it wasn't the big three, right? For a long time, that was kind of the
right.
MO, and I feel like that was like a ploy, and they were like, oh man, if we reference it and we build to it, they'll have to give it to us, and then they didn't get the permissions. They had to be like, all right, never mind, no Justice League and back off and.
I will
Mm.
say though, as far as like one cohesive show that like was the best throughout, is Superman and Lois. Absolutely. It it is completely unrelated. And I was watching season one, I was getting to the end of season one, and I was like, why does his fortress look different than Supergirl's? This is the same universe. And then like the literal end of season one, they point out that he's the only superhero. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, and I watched maybe the first season, maybe the first two, and I did really enjoy it. I've been meaning to finish it because it's done now, right? Or is it
No,
doing one more season?
three ended in a pretty massive cliffhanger. It's Doomsday arc.
Okay, and then
Um,
four is
four is
coming.
the last one. Yeah,
Okay,
four is the last one. But like, I mean, and that's got to finish by March next year because I think what June next year is when the movie drops.
yeah.
So you can't have a
Uh,
show on and a movie. People will be confused.
but like it brings in what was Arrow's sidekick? So like they did that real kind of
And he's
hedged
still
weather.
there.
Yeah.
And I think it's
I feel like
weird.
that's what makes DC on any multimedia so sloppy is they constantly have to do that where they won't
Yeah.
just do a clean break. It's always like, well, we still have this character that's like it's a different version of him, but we're not going to let you know it's a different version right away because I don't think we've really decided if this is part of the CW verse or yet not yet when we're still producing it. It's not
Yeah.
till like we finally are making the finale. We're like, okay, fuck it, we're not the same universe. Because that was the vibe I got through all of Superman and Lois was they hadn't really decided for sure if it was the same universe or not.
Yeah. Which is
Because
funny because they at the end of Crisis, they definitely set it up like that's the show it was going into.
exactly,
Because she calls him
exactly,
like the boys want to see you. And
yeah.
he was like confused. And I was like, is this show gonna be about him not realize like not knowing the two kids in this new reality? Like I was like, this is gonna be an interesting
Ooh,
show,
that would have been cool. That would have been
right?
neat.
But then they were like, "Oh shit, that'll be confusing for people or whatever, whatever the reason they came up with was." It's such a yeah. It's the CW was of its time, and the time is over, and we are in a much newer era. I like the fact that the first, well, I guess now second because they've prioritized Waller and Peacemaker. I think are going to come out before, uh, but like second or third or whatever Creature Commandos of all the shit out of the DC library.
Well, and Gunn was supposed to be simplifying stuff, right? How is season two of Peacemaker in the new universe, but season one isn't? Like that was such a weird
I'm
announcement.
hoping they don't call it season two.
Oh, I don't think they're going to. But I mean, all the
Yeah,
production shit still is. Like they just released the like, oh, season two production is going into, and like I get that they don't really have control over that, but
right.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
and I mean, I don't know. There really wasn't that much. It, it's a
There
digital
was the cameo at
release.
the end. That was it. That was all that mattered.
Delete it.
Oh, I'd miss it. I had fun with it. I thought it was a
C
good show.
CG. Are you talking about the post credits or
Oh, no, yeah, delete the scene. That's fair. I thought you were saying delete the whole season. I was like, no, you
no, no,
can't
no, just the
delete
scene. No, no,
Peacemaker.
just the scene. Like it just show the back shot. You don't have to show them there,
Yeah,
and you can just pretend it's
yeah.
whichever Justice League you
Or
came up
re
with.
or refilm it with the new actors like
Yeah,
one day
right.
when they
Because
all happen to be on set.
you don't see anyone except I think you only
You see
see
Ezra. You see Ezra because isn't he the one that like has a line and then Aquaman says something, but I think it's the back of
Aquaman
Aquaman's
says
head,
something.
maybe?
No, no, you see
Okay.
Aquaman's face. You see Momoa, but like
Okay.
you just shoot two new people. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure they've cast someone for Aquaman by now. I mean, like it's they're taking a very, very strange approach
And it's so
with
weird because the whole gimmick was that he was gonna do it less like convoluted. Gunn was
we'll
gonna come
see.
clean it up. It
Yeah, it was
was
gonna come clean it up, and then it's like, oh, we've cast Mr. Terrific, we've cast Angela Spica, and I was like, Authority? We're casting the Authority in the Superman movie, and then it
yeah,
just and the list kept going and going, and now Guy Gardner's in it, and I was like, what the fuck is happening in this movie?
yeah. It's I have hopes because I like what Gunn has done, but it's definitely gone a different direction than I expected when he came on board.
Yeah, I mean, we still haven't seen anything from it, and I'm interested to see where it comes out. Like whatever the first project is, and I mean the Superman movie is gonna be the real barometer for me because
Yeah.
Peacemaker was really good. If they keep the same pace and energy of it, I think it'll be a good season. A
But it's
Waller
its own
show,
thing. Peacemaker is such an isolated, like
Yeah, I mean it'll
toned
tie into
and
Waller, and I would wager it'll probably tie into Creature Commandos because that'll probably be an offshoot of Task Force X. Like
yeah.
that'll be the way to explain it. But like, well, yeah, because Flag's in it, so it has to be a. I mean, in some fashion, it has to be beholden to Amanda. But it's like she does a great job, so you know, Waller's going to be great. Creature Commandos, I'm super interested in because an animated project that is meant to live within a live action universe is
Yeah.
fascinating to me, especially since they're like, we're going to keep the same actors throughout. So, like, if they do show up in other things, which supposedly they will be the same actors. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I'm really interested. The execution is the thing because he even said games, and I'm like, how are you gonna bring games into this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's
makes me more nervous than anything though.
because that like shoots me back to like early 2000s when they did the X-Men games, the tie-in games, and they like
Yeah.
were stories between the movies. And I'm like, that kind of stuff could have been considered canon. Like you could have
Yeah.
said, oh, like we went and got Colossus in Russia or whatever. Like you could have
Well, and
said,
that stuff's always weird though because it's always canon until it isn't. Like you get that with Star Wars a
yep,
lot back in the day, where it's like, oh, this is the new canon, but if like a future movie decides canon's different, like just ignore it.
yeah. Because well, same thing with Star Trek. There was a post there was a countdown episode that was kind of tied into the J.J. Abrams verse, but
Yeah.
like the pre that events, the like events leading up to the jump back in time were all considered canon, and like you saw Data running the Enterprise, and uh, Picard was an ambassador, and like that was all considered canon until Picard launched.
Right.
So
Some of the stuff they're doing now with like that the JJ verse was also different pre the the traveling back in time stuff still confuses me to this day. Like I hate to take I know we got to go and so I hate bringing Star Trek back up, but
no. Well,
like
it's funny.
the
Well, a
fact
lot
that
of
it's also an alternate universe before the split now really like to me changes the entire impact of them
I
going
don't
back. Like
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Here's the thing. I am taking at face value what she said in that Strange New Worlds episode, the
okay,
Khan thing. I'm
yeah,
taking at face value that she says that time heals, and the when you stop an event that has to happen, and like it's a Marvel thing, right? It's the Nexus event.
right,
This Nexus event has to happen. So you stopped it in 1999 when it was supposed to happen the first time. Cool, it moved to 2015 or whatever, and then you stopped
right.
at that and moved to 2024.
But that's still our universe. Like that's what's like insane to me is they're apparently making a prequel movie pre the J.J. Abrams movie is what like the current thing they're talking about. Is like they're gonna do a movie that takes place in the Kelvin timeline that happens before the Kelvin
Well,
events.
you have that what 20 no like 17-year period.
If that's what they meant, which is not like there's a whole Reddit thread that I'd have to go back and look at. I don't remember if they explicitly said it's before then or if it's just implied that's even longer ago because I think they say it's like before the Enterprise even like it was somehow implied it was during the time frame of the Enterprise show. So like the launch of the NX whatever Enterprise,
But
which would have to like
that's still prime timeline.
no, they're saying that it would be the Kelvin
Well,
universe
it's
version of
both.
that.
Well, it's both timelines. Yeah,
It should be. It should be. The events are supposed to be identical until it comes back.
until the
But
jump back in time,
but
until the Kelvin is
right,
destroyed.
right. So I'm hoping I guess it could totally be like Paramount fucking up like promo material, which they would not be beyond them. But
Right.
it was somehow like people were up in arms, and I definitely joined the bandwagon that it was like you can't fucking change and then yeah. So
Yeah. It's.
maybe
I mean,
I'll see if I can find I'll see if I can find it and send you the thread because it
for
sounded
sure.
like it was pretty legitimate anger and it definitely riled me up
It's.
because you can't do
It's.
that. It's not an alternate universe. It is just an alternate timeline. Like that made it a separate universe. Like you can't
Yeah.
go
But after a certain
before it.
point,
Right.
which I guess. I mean, I guess if you say that it's retroactive, so then that created a separate dimension, separate universe, then sure. but like if
Well, and I
essentially the events would be the same up until that
well,
event.
and I did see, since you brought up the like time healing thing, I did see people like fan theorying it that it was like a, well, it probably when it came back, everything before then was the same, but because we know Time War, like the past can it is constantly changed in Star Trek because of excursions into the past, that maybe other time travel events then made the Kelvin universe have a different past, which like fine, but like that is so fucking sloppy to like sell a show. Just put it in the fucking prime timeline and like
I thought it was a
let
movie.
Kel I I think it is a movie, but like, did I say show? Either way,
I,
putting
still, I'm like, I really wanted a four, but like they don't want to pay them for money, which I
that's
understand.
I think that's it. I think it's all money at this point. I think all of them are willing to come back, but
Well, yeah, but then
no, because
they all have bigger careers since the original.
yeah,
And it
well,
was supposed to be a prequel thing, right? That was supposed to be a time travel thing. The original plan was a time travel
because they
thing, so
wanted to
they
bring Hemsworth back. They
yeah,
wanted to do short
like
time
a
travel
father
just
son
to show
thing.
you, yeah, just so Kurt can hang with Dad. And that was right when Hemsworth was like on the rise, so that's why they
Yeah,
announced
that
it.
was Ragnarok. Like that was what that
Yeah.
was.
I don't know, but the original Abrams movie I enjoyed, and then the third one I fucking love. I can't think of the name of it. Because
Beyond.
Into Darkness was two. Yeah, Beyond. I love Beyond. Beyond is a great movie.
I did love Into Darkness too. I did not have the like nostalgia glasses for Khan. I've seen Khan multiple times. I don't think it's as good as movie as people remember it to be. I think it was just so good because the people that watched the show originally got the
Yeah.
callback to the show, and it was like a big moment for them. So it was their end game at the time, and I think that they just like hung on to that because it was such a big moment for them. Whereas
I don't hate
this
Into
didn't
Dark.
have that build up.
I don't hate Into Darkness as much as a lot of people, but it
Yeah.
definitely feels like the misstep of the trilogy. And I definitely see all the issues people point about, like, well, if you could just transwarp like that far, like that just defeats the purpose of the ships. All like a lot of the
Yep.
complaints about Into Darkness make sense to me. And I just thought the just having them flip roles was way too on the nose, and like having that was just meh. But
And then just
uh
actual resurrection.
yeah.
Like
And
he
not
was
waiting for a third movie. Like if Beyond had been a way for them to resurrect him, that would have been fun. But having it just literally be that simple of an end was
yeah,
too
and
easy.
it was like turning an in gag, the triple in gag
Yeah.
into the actual method of saving him. Cool, I guess, but also if the tribbles can't be killed, that means the tribbles should have taken over the universe by now.
Well, it also forever breaks death, and like Beyond did a really good job of walking that back. But like walking out of Into Darkness, you're like, okay, so no one ever needs to permanently die in the Star Trek universe now. Like they've solved it. It's kind of what people also complained about Krakoa, and to me is what made Krakoa so interesting because of the limitations they put on it and the way they handled it. But like, yeah, Star Trek solved resurrection, but Beyond made it all worth it. I fucking love that movie so
Yeah, Beyond
much.
was a great movie. Beyond was so good.
I can't believe we're at 2.5 hours.
We're we're definitely gonna call it there. I gotta get some sleep. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
yeah.
This
Let's
has
do this
been
again sometime.
absolutely, absolutely. Make sure you guys check out irrepressiblecomics.com. Check out the call for submissions if you want to create something or just
Hell yeah.
follow along and see who's going to be making cool stuff with the Irrepressible Comics and Colonel Jefferson going forward. That's going to be it for this one. Thank you for watching. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much, man.
listening, and we'll see you in the next
The
one.
gas, but I'm keeping it mobile. Whatever they said, cool. Take a toaster with you when you swim, motherfucker, that's dead cool.